All right, Catherine, you can take it away.
Great. Hello, everyone. The time is 5:33. We're going to, I am calling the South End Landmark District Commission hearing for February 3rd, 2026 to order. I'm temporarily chairing because John Amadeo is on his way. Commissioners present are myself, Catherine Hunt, John Freeman, Peter Sanborn, Felicia Jacques, and that is our group for tonight. Today, the Commission will be holding a public hearing to review applications in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, extending the suspension of these provisions until June 30th, 2027. We are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the South End Landmark District Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. This hearing is being recorded. All further conversations among commissioners should be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing has adjourned. Are there any media or elected officials currently present? If so, please raise your hand using the Zoom meeting platform and state your name, title, and affiliation. Do we see any?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. We will repeat these instructions throughout the hearing. Okay. Tonight's agenda, we have design review, administrative review, ratification of the January 6th meeting minutes, and staff updates. Our first design review submission is 49 Worcester Street. The proposed work is to remove and replace a front yard fence. And we did see this applicant last month, so this is continued from the January 6th hearing. Do we have a representative here?
Yes, I'm here, Bridget Williams with Hickox Williams Architects.
Great.
And Bridget, sorry, yeah, Bridget, you can turn on your camera if you wish. I have your presentation, but if you wish to share your screen, you can also do that as well. Or if you just want me to just go through
I'll let you do the hard work.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Peter Sanborn here.
Yes, Peter.
I'm going to recuse myself from this application. May not be necessary, but there's an abundance of caution because the applicant and I are sharing the same contractor on projects.
Thank you, Peter. Duly noted.
And then,
sorry.
Apologies for interruption. Before we continue or before we start into the presentation, Commissioner John Amadeo has joined. So just want to state it for the record.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie.
And thank you for unmuting me.
Do you want to jump in here, John? And
Sure.
All right. So Bridget was just about to start her presentation.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay.
Go
All right.
ahead, Bridget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're here to continue the conversation about the railing in front of 49 Worcester Street. And at last month's hearing, we and the staff were asked to do more research on what seems to have been in place when Bainbridge Bunting took all the extraordinary photos of the streets of the South End. So our first slide shows the Bainbridge Bunting photograph, the detail, which is not great resolution, and also a photograph of what was going on shortly after Bunting took his photographs, which was a lot of neighborhoods were contributing their cast iron railings to the war effort. Next slide. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through this. This is a railing that Jacqueline and the staff found and felt to be similar to what seems to show in the Bainbridge bunting photograph. And these, on this sheet, you see that house, which is a very different sort of house, a Beaufront house, 25 Hanson Street, no yard, just the railing in front of what appears to be, possibly a little areaway in front of those lower windows. And the bunting photograph of 49 Worcester and the 1972 photograph. Okay, next slide. There's an anomaly that is in the current day. Someone has modified the railing and there's sort of an odd plaque in the middle of the railing. This is again 25 Hanson Street. So we did look for it. Let's see the next slide, Jacqueline. We found something that we think is similar to that railing. It's not exactly the same. But it is in the Lawler Foundry catalog, and they have it shown upside down for some reason, but we flipped it. It may be the same. We don't really have the weight of the material. We don't have the specific dimensions of the parts. So we're still in the sort of not too sure department. Next slide. So this is the block where 49 Worcester is, and this is Worcester Street going from Newland Street to the church on Tremont Street. 49 Worcester is in the block that has a, I don't know if I can't point, can I? No. Anyway.
Should be able to perhaps, but if not, you can just let me know. I can.
That's fine. It's okay. You can see there are, on this block, there are three types of streets, of buildings. They're the Beaufronts. There are the ones with Orioles, like 49 Worcester, and then there's sort of an in-between style in the green. We're showing this picture in part because of how clear it is that a certain consistency was intended across these houses. And none of the Beaufronts on the left are similar to the Hanson Street building, but not exactly the same. But there were certain elements of vocabulary being used. Once the cast iron that's shown in the bunting photograph was contributed to the collection of medals for the war, these houses, as far as we can tell, none of the houses on this block retained that heavier cast iron style of railing. But they seemingly got together and chose a style that then became the prevalent one on that block. And I think we go to the next slide. These are all the railings on 49 was on the odd side of Worcester Street that have that railing, the railing that we would like to propose, which is different from the cast iron, but it maintains the history of that block in that neighborhood, which was that they all gave up their cast iron at a certain time, and they all decided on a new style of railing that represented 1942 or 3, whenever it was that they did that. The area of 49 Worcester Street has a very minimal railing that is not of particularly high quality or interest and looks like it was probably done later. I don't know, Jacqueline, if you have any information about when that railing would have been put in, but it's a very, very plain small square posts at the corners and square section rod pickets on the fence. One of the beauties of these blocks was that when you came, you were living in a house that had a certain elegance because it was part of a larger scene. And when you came out of your house, you had the sense of that order because the railings in this case, coming out of 49 Worcester Street, the railings to the right would match, which belonged to the next door neighbor, would match the ones to the left, which were your railings. So each doorway would have the same railings on both sides in that pathway toward the street. And this shows a lot of consistency. There are places where there are railings missing. There are places where there are, the sort of inferior railing that is at 49 Worcester Street, but nowhere is there any of the cast iron. So the next slide. This shows that railing that we have identified on, most of the houses on that side of the block. And it also exists on the other side. Not obviously, there's a gap where the school is, but to the left and right of the school, we still found instances of this railing that is on the screen now. And our proposal is to restore the consistency of that experience of coming out of one's house, finding the railings the same on both sides. And I think the next slide shows a photograph of the existing railing. You can see in that photograph that there is a hole in the stone at the base, which would have been the hole that supported the base, the railing, the cast iron railing. So that hole is definitely part of history, but it is, a history of a community getting together to make a contribution to an overwhelming need in the war, and then the community coming back together and deciding that even though all the cast iron was gone, they would choose a consistent model for their railings so that once again, they would have that elegance of feeling that they were part of a larger composition, a larger urban fabric. I think is that my last slide? Yes.
It is.
Thank you,
John,
Jacqueline.
excuse me, John, I'd like to point out that Commissioner Christopher DeBoer joined the hearing at the start of this application review.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. So I have some questions. I'm sorry, applicant, could you tell me your first name again? I've forgotten it.
Oh, sorry, Bridget Williams.
Bridget, thank you. And I'm sorry, my camera's not working. I can't figure out how to rectify that in the course of the meeting. But anyway, I have a question. So is the railing that you're proposing to match your neighbor, and is the neighbor at 51 Worcester Street, that's the railing you're trying to match?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's existing. That's your neighbor's rail.
That's existing, and that would be what was on your right-hand side coming down the stairs out of the house.
Understood. Thank you. And I have a question for staff. Staff, do you know if we approved the railing at 51 Worcester Street?
Yeah, so currently, because of our move, our access to files prior to 2007 has proven quite difficult to get. But we do know that if they were approved, it was something before 2007. We weren't able to really solidify when that date was, if it was approved.
John, I'd
Mhm.
like to point out that there are several other addresses with that same fence. It's not just 51.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I understood that too from Bridget's presentation, that there was a cohesion down the street. And you were just looking to complete that cohesion.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes. Understood. Thank you. And thank you,
Thanks.
Catherine,
Sure.
for that clarification in case somebody else missed that.
Just wanted to make
Um,
sure. Yeah.
Mhm. And I was not at last month's hearing too, so I appreciate any extra assistance in understanding this application. So, anyway, any questions from commissioners? Catherine, while we're talking, any questions for Bridget or staff?
I have no questions. Pardon me. I do want to point out, it's interesting that yesterday I was walking by the public garden, which was founded in 1835. And interestingly, the fence along the garden looks remarkably similar to this installation.
Hmm.
I mean, at the last hearing, there were comments about, well, it wasn't original and so on and so forth, but certainly looks lovely. That's all I'll
Uh-huh.
say.
Right. Okay, nice observation, although we may not know necessarily when the fence around the public garden that's there now went in. Could have gone in late 19th century, the fence that's there. So we could look into that. I'm sure that's something we could find out.
Looks pretty old.
Well, 1870 looks pretty old. But Peter Sanborn, any questions?
Oh, Peter recused himself.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I didn't hear that part. So Chris, I understand you're on.
Sure. Bridget, I appreciate you kind of did everything I did. I took a long walk along that street a couple of weeks ago. And there is the continuity of those, and they are quite lovely. And the only two pieces that I saw that original were up in the 60 range. There was like a 4-foot section that came out perpendicular to the buildings. And then all the way down on Shawmut, which is just past Newland, still part of Worcester, was something. I'm just going to say great homework, everybody. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you, Chris. Felicia, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Oh, sure. John, any questions? You're muted, John.
Sorry, I don't have any questions. I think we went through a lot of this last month. And if we want to do comments, we can talk about what the tension or the issue is in trying to interpret our regulations and see that within the context.
Well, John, since you're the last one I'm asking questions from, you can launch right into comments because that's next.
Okay, well, I'm actually most interested to see what you're going to say about it. What I said last month is that we had that very first photograph on the very first page was a photograph found by staff, which gave us an inclination or a image of what the original railings looked like. And at that point, the reason we asked for more research was to understand how that fit in, if it could be matched, if it could, if that was the right thing to do. I think that Bridget's presentation tonight is very compelling, and I've always been a fan of or an advocate to understand the whole history of a building, not just from a particular era, though that may be the era of significance, but how buildings evolve in important ways, and certainly how a community responds to a war effort is part of an important history. The contradiction is that the era of the period of significance in the South End predates that. So do we take the information that we have from the first pictures and say, no, we have to go that way, or do we try to understand and represent the history of the full history of the community beyond the period of significance. And right now, I don't have an answer to that, and I'm interested in what my fellow commissioners say.
Yeah, interesting conundrum, John. When it gets to me my turn, I'll weigh in. But in the meantime, I'll ask others. Felicia, do you have any comments?
No, as I said, participated in last month's meeting, and I understand the conundrum, but I also sort of am looking at extending the continuity of what is there now. I would wonder where the improvement would be if we were to revert back and require a shorter fence in the middle of what is a very continuous long line of similar fencing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to address that, Felicia, when it comes to me my turn.
Yep.
Chris, comments?
I'm fine, thanks. No comments.
Okay. And Catherine?
I agree with what Felicia just said. I think, and I agree with John that Bridget's presentation was compelling. I think it would be a shame to interrupt the flow along that street. I've walked it. It's lovely. These fences that have been installed are all compatible, and I think it would be a shame to break it up with something that maybe 50, 70, 100 years from now, somebody else might replace their fence, but in the interim, it would be disruptive to the flow of the street.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I agree also with fellow commissioners about your presentation, Bridget, very compelling. And thank you for doing that additional research after coming to us last month. You know, I think this is a difficult one, but part of the reason I said to Felicia, and I'll say to Catherine, about the issue of inconsistency in the interest of compliance is that take windows, for example. We have had applicants come to us and ask us if they can install windows on their third floor unit that match the other windows on the first and second floor, when the other windows on the first and second floor are not compliant with district standards. But they said, but if we put in the compliant windows, our building will look non-cohesive. And our answer to that has always been, at some point, those other floor windows will have to be replaced. And when they are replaced, they will be replaced with the correct windows, and the building will ultimately be cohesive again. So, you know, there's a lot of buildings on this street, though, that would have to replace their garden fences before that kind of cohesion would be achieved. And I wonder if that would be, you know, sort of tilting at windmills to hope that that would ever happen. And you know, especially since these rails that the applicant wants to match are relatively new, probably within the last 20 or 25 years. They've still got a long life in them. So it would be a very long time before they would get replaced. Unlike windows, which would need bad non-compliant windows often need replacement in a much shorter period than that. So I'm personally leaning toward approving the applicant's request to replace their current rail with a rail that matches 51, their neighbor, even though it is not the original rail. And John mentions that, you know, it helps tell the story of the evolution of the neighborhood. That's not really our charge. It may make us feel a little better by approving something that is not necessarily matching the rail that was original to the building. But I think, like I said, I think it would be a very long time before adjacent buildings would need to replace their rail, and it would be a very long time before that kind of originality would be achieved. And when and if that originality were ever, or authenticity were ever regained, would we lose that moment in history when all the rails were removed to support the war effort, which is a story probably worth telling, 50 years from now. So I guess that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm still a little bit non-conclusive personally, but if I had to conclude in one way or the other, I would conclude in favor of the applicant's proposal. So that's where I stand. And I don't know if that helps anybody frame a motion, or if there are any other comments from commissioners that need to be heard before we hear a motion. If there are, please speak up, because I won't know who you are unless you speak up. If there aren't, I'd be ready for a motion.
I have a question.
Go ahead, John.
One of the concerns, of course, whenever we make a decision, is that keeping that decision consistent down for the remaining years of the commission. Jackie, how difficult would it be to put a note in the other properties on the street saying why the commission made this decision? Or some other way, is there some other way to put a flag on it so that 10 years or 5 years from now, when one of these fences has fallen apart or been hit by a car or something, that the commission at that time doesn't say, well, we want to go back to the original?
Yeah, I would say the best way would just put it on the record as one of your, as a commissioner. Staff notes and staff comments, or I'm sorry, staff notes are really helpful in deciding sort of how we interpret these applications in the future. We always look back at what was happening in the past and recordings and the notes that are taken, with a suggestion, if that's something that the commission wishes to add, is something that I think would help provide clarity in future applications like this.
Agreed. So
Okay.
can you make a note, Jackie, on the other properties on the street that are adjacent to reference 49 Worcester Street notes?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when we have applications like this that come at a budding structure, we would be happy, and I would be happy to sort of provide a recording of this hearing and this particular application.
And also, John, in that line, I would like our motion to say that this decision is unique to this location, and that we might not make a similar decision in another situation. The applicant, Bridget, you've made a very compelling presentation, but other streets may have a completely different story, and we wouldn't necessarily want to use this as a precedent to support a different story that needs to be told elsewhere.
Do you think the story on other streets would not include the World War II need for metal and steel?
Not necessarily. Well, that might not be the story we would be worried about. Other streets don't always have that much cohesion in their rail designs. Rail designs have sometimes altered quite a bit, 2 or 3 buildings down a street. Even the original rails is what I'm referring to.
Right.
The original rails didn't always have the same rail design for the full length of the street, and sometimes changed every 2 or 3 buildings. So, because different developers built different sets of buildings. So, there may be a different need or a different story being told on another street, not the same story as here.
Okay, in that case, I will make a motion to approve the application as submitted with two provisos. One is that the notes be put, staff come up with a way to flag or link the other parts of the street and refer to this decision and why it was made. I won't try to repeat the arguments that were made. And the second proviso is to note that this is a unique situation and is not a precedent for other streets or other neighborhoods.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded, which means we can go to public comment now. So Jackie, if you can project the script, I'll
There
invite.
it is. Apologies.
That's great.
Writing down the notes.
No, yes, of course. But thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and to provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, do we have
Yep.
anybody wanting to comment?
Yep, so we did not receive any written public comment and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we'll go right to a vote. Catherine,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Felicia,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much.
Oh, you're welcome, Bridget, and thank you very much for the depth of your research and the effort you put into your presentation. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you all commissioners and staff for putting a real challenge in our hands.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that.
And I appreciate the historic photographs from 1941.
Oh, good.
And I hope that they will stay in our files for future reference, because that may be helpful for other applications as well. And even knowing those photographs exist.
Could you send those to staff? And if
So
they didn't come from.
Yeah, I think everything we have is from Digital Commonwealth.
Okay.
Which is just as a website getting better and better every minute. And Jacqueline, we can talk about any pictures you might want because we've spent some time on that site.
Yes.
Yeah.
A picture of the women taking down the fence is amazing.
Yeah.
It's a whole section that has to do with collecting scrap metal for the war effort. I recommend that, if you have half an hour just to see what that was like, it's incredible. And it's well worth it. But thank you all very much.
I remember my mother talking about it as a young woman.
It was, for those of us who would like to preserve things, it was also kind of an extraordinary act of violence on the city, but for a good cause.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
you very much, Bridget. And we're going to go now to the next application, which is 30.
Apologies, John. Before we start, seeing that Peter Sanborn is back and is not recusing himself anymore from any of their applications. Catherine, currently there are 6 commissioners on this hearing right now. A maximum of 5 can vote. Catherine, because you're an alternate, you are not able to vote, but you are able to make motions and second, and you're able to comment and ask questions.
Right.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jackie. I'll go have dinner. No.
No, please stay, Catherine.
I'm staying.
That's right. Good. So we'll go to 35 Braddock Park now. The work is to install a roof deck with guardrails of black metal framing and glass infills. So can we have the applicant
Daniel and
introduce
Justin.
yourself?
Yeah, Daniel and Justin were the project representatives, to my understanding. I've unmuted them and they should be able to turn on their camera if they wish. And so if you could state your name and affiliation for the record.
Yep. My name is Daniel Dipaolo, owner and operator of Dipaolo Builders. Justin, you're on mute. Hi, John.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
We've worked with Dan on projects.
Hi,
I don't
everyone.
think it's a conflict of interest, but go ahead.
We also have the architect with us tonight. as well as a representative from Polgini and Norton, who's representing the homeowner in this case.
They can raise their hand so I can make them if the commission has any questions that's pointed to them, if they can raise their hand so I can allow.
Yeah, it would be great because Chris Wortley is going to help with the presentation, the design aspect of the presentation. So I'm just going to give you a brief background of our homeowners and the property. So Sam and Laura Madoff, they've lived on Braddock Park at 15 for the last 15 years, deeply invested in this neighborhood and its character. Sam's a radiologist at New England Baptist Hospital. Lauren is a pediatric anesthesiologist at Boston Children's. They're raising two young children here in the South End. The opportunity arose to purchase 35 Braddock Park as one of their neighbors who's elderly. He's in his early 90s, I believe. Just the home became too much for him to maintain. He was living on the 4th floor and the first 3 floors were uninhabitable, basically. They were excited to keep this property as a single family residence. They outbid several developers who probably would have pursued a multi-unit approach to this property. But their wish was to keep it as a single family home. They selected Dipaolo Builders specifically because of our background as historic preservationists and our shared commitment to respecting the integrity architecturally of the neighborhood. The Madoffs refer to the roof deck as their upyard. It's envisioned as a modest, thoughtful space for family and friends to gather and enjoy the city skyline while remaining unobtrusive and as possible and sensitive to the historic context of the South End. With that, I'd like to forward over to Chris for his design review. Alexa, shut music off. Chris, are you there?
Yep.
Awesome.
So I know we've sent in previous packages before. So this, I believe, is a conglomeration of everything. But the idea for design-wise for the roof deck was, as Justin had mentioned, was the upyard. And that arose out of, I grew up in Maine, where your yard outside your front door is called a dooryard. So in the city of Boston, for lack of yard, they put it up on their roof. So the design is sort of a meandering meadowland through sort of the middle of the unit front to back. So low-lying plants, very meadowy plants, and then gathering spaces front to back. The owners, Sam and Lauren, had expressed a desire to have glass railings actually on both sides. They wanted to really feel like it just extended beyond the limits of the footprint of the house. Having done project in the South End previously, I told them that the Braddock Park side, the railing would have to be set so far back if it was not a black metal railing that they would really lose too much occupiable space on the roof deck. But since the rear of the house was on a private alley, we wanted to propose the glass railing on this side to appease that desire for the owners design-wise. Images here are a little bit for example. We haven't fully selected our plantings yet, but flowering meadows, grasses is the idea that we're going for there. So you can see a little bit of how, in plan, the front to back, the front is pictured more of a lounge gathering space. The rear might be.
Excuse me, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can't tell from these images what is front and what is back.
Apologies.
So because they're not labeled. So could you start with that, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Page south, where the bow window is the rear alley. Page north, where the oriole would be the Braddock Park side. So
okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Apologies for that, John. Mr. Chairman. So you see along the Braddock Park side, we've actually pulled back the railing a little bit from the cornice, and that's to accommodate so you wouldn't actually see the assembly and the finish of the roof deck and the growing medium. So that's set back to avoid even seeing any difference of the cornice in the streetscape from Braddock Park. So we set the railing is actually set back to where that roof deck extends to. So it's not actually right on the edge along the Braddock Park side. Along the rear alley side, the glass railing we've proposed is also set back the 3 whites of the brick facade. So it is not quite right on the edge, but it is trying to maximize the usable space on the roof deck for the owners. A few other design notes. There are some solar tubes, hopefully a large light well as well. None of these would be visible from either the rear alley or Braddock Park. Yeah, that's really the gist of it.
Okay.
Go
Go ahead, Chris. No, keep going, Chris.
I was only going to mention the cover slide had said a black framed railing with glass infill. Ideally, we would like to not have the black frame. We really want it to disappear, both from views below or from the southwest corridor, as well as from being on the roof. If it's really not feasible for the commission, we'd probably elect to just do a black metal railing to match the front, as opposed to some kind of hybrid. We either kind of want it to make it disappear, or we would make it fit in. So I don't think we would really go to a black framed glass railing hybrid design there.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that clarification. So we're going to have commissioners ask questions first of you and or the staff, and then we will comment on your application before taking public comment. So that's how this will go. Well, then we'll make a motion, and then after the motion is made, we'll ask for public comment on the motion. So I will first begin asking commissioners questions if they have questions. So John, do you have questions?
Yeah, a couple, certainly. Do you have a section through the railing that you're proposing, or do you have, meaning a detail, or do you have cut sheets for the railings or the glass railings?
We're working through that detail, but it'd be a C.R. Lawrence aluminum shoe gasketed with museum non-reflected glass sitting into that shoe.
Can you get that in a curve?
It'll probably have to be segmented.
Is there mechanical equipment on the roof?
There will be mini split condenser units.
And where will those be?
Those would be along the left side of that left demising wall, sort of tucked within the planting. So both hidden from people occupying it, but also set back from the roofs, from the edges of the roof.
And have you done a mock-up of the head house height? Did I see, or the railings yet? Or
yeah,
Jackie?
Dan and Justin mocked up one for the January hearing. We've actually since revised it and lowered it since then. So it's actually improved from that standpoint, but I believe that was not on the docket for today.
All right. And the sonotubes, what are those for?
Solar tube. Sorry, that's a misprint.
Oh, solar tubes. Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I know what that is. That's like a skylight. It's to bring light.
No, we're not putting piers for anything up there. Apologies.
All right, well, it said sonotube, so I thought it was concrete.
Understandable.
Yeah, and how high do those stick up from the roof?
I'd have to check my specs on that, but no more than a foot.
Yeah, okay. And the roof deck is how high above the highest point of the existing roof?
So a little bit tricky question to answer. We are actually reframing the roof with clear span TJIs. Both the condition of the framing and actually the masonry that it was pocketing into on each side, we're going to improve. So the existing rafters or joists were actually on an incline as opposed to more modern construction with tapered insulation. So we're going to revise that and set the top of the new joist at the lowest existing joist and build up our tapered insulation there. So long story short, the top of the new joist, the top of deck, double check so I don't do it off the top of my mind, is about 17 inches.
So when you do the mock-up, how do you figure? Are you figuring that 17 inches plus the railings or the head house, or is that still got some variation to it?
The railing is the 17 is 36 inches above the 17, so it would be above that deck height. The head house we've actually sunk into the insulation assembly, so you'd step out and then come up onto the deck as well. That's one way we reduce the head house height there. And so the highest point that we've taken, I believe it was mocked up off of essentially the cornice, because that's the top of the existing joist, more or less.
That all sounds rational, but the more or less worries me a little bit, because I know how that works and when you're actually building it. Those are my questions. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Catherine, any questions?
Yes, one. In this view, it looks like the railing that at the top, that's the back of the building, right?
Sorry, that's the front part. That's the Braddock part side.
Oh, the curve, the bow is the back of the building?
Yeah.
So this looks like the rail is right up against at the edge of the roof. Is that right?
It's set back about can actually double check, a foot from the roof.
1 foot? Isn't there a zoning requirement that it has to be more than that? Anybody know? Felicia?
Well, it was my exact question as well,
Yeah.
Catherine, that it seems like it's a little close. And my question was it dimension? How far back is it?
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Great
Boston
mind.
used to have, it wasn't zoning. Boston used to have a safety requirement that was a city ordinance unrelated to code, that it be set back 5 feet. But in my experience, ISD has been inconsistent about requiring that.
Yeah,
So-
because you have balconies that don't have a 5-foot setback on buildings.
Right.
But it is, as far as I know, still a city ordinance.
A city ordinance.
Yeah, and that would affect, as we were talking previously, insurance, which is out of our purview.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I don't know how much more it could go back because of the solar tubes that are on the right. But if you guys are saying that it's sort of up to the discretion of the city ordinance, then that answers that
It's
question.
not our purview, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we
But
go
we
back
have
to
we
that?
have our own regulations to worry about.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the view of straight on, like if you're on the deck?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did back it up. Sorry to interrupt. We did back it up a couple feet from Jacqueline's suggestions, about a foot from last month's meeting for this. So I don't know, Justin, if you want to jump in, because you've been spearheading with Jacqueline on this. The suggestion was to bring it back about 6 inches from where it was for our markup, from what I understand.
Yeah, from the original, we had it right up against the edge prior. We have pushed it back, but obviously our hope is to maintain as much, space for our client up top. So,
Sure. So my second question is about that glass. Well, it's not really a rail, it's like a glass wall, right?
correct.
And your owners aren't scared to death. If I were up there, I'd be scared to death about that thing. But
Justin and Dan can both contend I won't go near the edges of this roof deck. It's not my
I'm with you,
preference
Chris.
either.
Wow.
But
yeah.
yeah.
To each his own, I guess, but
Yeah.
absolutely scary to me. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Was that your questions, Catherine?
Yeah, that was
Okay. Chris, any questions?
I have two questions. What the material for the head house exterior, is that a black aluminum, or are you doing copper or?
Most likely a black metal clad aluminum, non-reflective as well. Trying to match, some other of the head houses that we've seen during this process, looking around as well. That tends to, it's really not very visible as we walked the southwest corridor and Braddock Park a lot. But even from neighbors, what does it look like to the neighbors? We're not trying to overpower them with any kind of design ideas either. So if it's non-reflective, that helps the neighbors who both have roof decks on either side, and maybe let it disappear a little bit on the roofscape.
I'm always a big fan of the copper and how it changes color and how it looks old. And that also is my big question for us is it viewable? I mean, if we don't have to follow the city ordinance, if it's there, that's not our purview. If it sets back far enough, we can't see it from multiple places. Who cares if it's glass? Who cares if it's metal? If it's not seen, same kind of for the material of the head house. If it's going to be neighborhood compatible, that's how I kind of look at it. I mean, and I thought the railing had to be 42 inches.
Not if it's a single family home, is that right?
Correct.
Well, if class or not, I think 4-year-olds running around.
I would take 6 feet personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are kind of my questions. Just what's visible, and the sonotubes don't have to be within the deck area. They can be out separate because they are low to the. It's like a vent cap.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Felicia, any questions?
Yeah, just sort of building on Chris's question around the height. It looks like the glass wall at the head house section is taller than the Braddock Park perspective. You mentioned that if the sort of glass railing or see-through railing was not something that moved forward, would you be mimicking this style of railing that you have at the Braddock Park elevation?
Yes.
Would it be the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the one shown is not, the exact detail of what we were doing. We would also, that would be respectful to the streetscape as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions, Felicia?
No, I'm set. Thank you.
Great. Peter, any questions?
No, mine have been answered by other commissioners. Thanks.
So because I was not here last month, I have some questions both for staff and fellow commissioners as well as the applicant. Were there mock-ups for the railings on both the alley side and the Braddock Park side constructed and viewed by either staff or commissioners?
So I can jump in and just say that the applicants were listed on the agenda for design review, in particular the roof deck, but that was actually withdrawn. So they didn't come to the commission for design review. This is the first time that the commission has seen these plans. And second, to respond to your other question, they did set up a mock-up on both the Braddock Park side and the rear side. Sarah and I both went out to go take a look at it. We didn't see the proposed footprint of the rails visible from the Braddock Park, so at the front facade. But at the rear, we did see that it was quite visible from Southwest Corridor and at the very end of Holyoke Street.
Uh-huh.
And that was shared with the applicants as well.
Okay. And what about the head house? Was that mocked up? And if so, was it visible?
Yeah, so the head house is actually does not fall under our purview. So as we wrote in our staff comments, it is included within the roof deck plans. However, it's exempt because it's considered an addition, and under the standards and criteria, additions only fall under a review if visible from a public street or avenue. The head house was not visible from a public street or avenue. It was only visible from Southwest Corridor, which is a public way. So sort of lots of words, but falls out of our
we've come across that situation before, and I appreciate you repeating this distinction. between public avenue or street and a public way with regard to the head house. But you said that the alley edge mock-up was visible from the end of Holyoke as well as from the southwest corridor.
Yep, that's right. So just the proposed railings were at the rear were visible from those particular
Right.
areas.
Significantly visible to the point where we should have a commission subcommittee go out and look at it.
Sarah, feel free to jump in if there's something you'd like to add, but staff's sort of attitude towards approaching this was that it was certainly visible, and to take into consideration the proposed railings of glass, it was certainly something that we did flag and wanted to bring forth to the commission with the railings. And then if needed, I can pull up images of the visibility that we assessed.
Okay. I actually would like to see that, but before we get to that point, I want to just double check with a railing as close to the cornice as possible. I'm just, I guess, say pleasantly surprised to hear you say that it was not visible or barely visible. What was the level of visibility from Braddock Park?
So from Braddock Park, it was not visible at all.
Just 1 foot back, it was not visible. That just shocks me. But
shocked us as well.
Okay.
Well,
we went through.
What is the setback from Braddock? I thought the 1 foot
The
was.
Braddock side is set back more than 1 foot.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
You said 1 foot before.
Well, 1 foot was
the rear
back.
alley is set back 1 foot.
Oh, the rear is 1 foot. So the front is.
The front
Can you give
is
us-
about 6 foot from the front edge, roughly.
So that's the metal railing at the top rendering. That doesn't look like 6 feet, but okay.
And that was my question, John, exactly. That railing.
Yeah, that railing, if it's only 3 feet tall,
Yep.
the horizontal dimension looks far less like half the height of the railing. So
It's not, it's less than 6 feet.
Then what is it?
So the demising wall that sticks out a bit further from there is more like 4.5 feet. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a black metal railing can be visible from the Braddock Park side.
I will correct you.
Okay.
Since
Yeah,
you
that is
asked,
wrong.
since you asked.
Yeah.
Our charge is that no rails shall be visible from a public street or a public way. That's our charge. We have leaned in favor of applicants in order to allow roof decks in extenuating circumstances where a non-visible rail would mean there would be no deck at all because of the visibility from certain angles. The rail would be set back so far from the edge, sometimes from the back and the front, if the back is also visible from a public way, that there would be almost no deck worth building. And so we have allowed a minimum amount of rail to be visible, something like 6 to 8 inches of the top of the rail, not the full height of the rail. So usually that means setting the rail as far back as the front chimney, sometimes even farther back than the front chimney, in order to make the front from the street not be visible. But, you know, certain narrow streets can somehow luck out. And although Braddock Park would be a wider street, so that's what surprises me, because it has a park island in the middle. If we're on that part of Braddock Park. So
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure.
John, may I ask a question about that rail also?
You may.
It seems that there's too much going on there with the double length across the top, or is it just?
Well, the rail design itself, yes, needs to be simplified than the rail
okay.
that they're showing, but we haven't even gotten to that yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Sure. But your keen eye picked up on that.
What are we seeing in this picture?
Yeah, just to annotate what you guys are saying. So this is the view from the private alley, and we are standing literally in the middle of this corridor. So what you'll see here is kind of up here, taking away the scaffolding is where 35 Braddock is at the rear. And so this was the proposed mock-up of the railings. So again, the more back we went, it was kind of hard because it was right after it snowed and there was lots of ice. So our mobility was a little limited in regard to going around and taking better photos. But this was the best image that we could show in relation to the visibility. Again, staff felt like this was something that was pretty visible considering in addition to the proposed glass railing design.
Right.
So this is the back, but we're seeing a straight line. We're not actually seeing the curved, the point of the closest curve.
Yes, due to the scaffolding.
Yes.
Right. We're also seeing a lot of non-compliant visible rails farther down lower left of the photograph, which suggests to me that those were not reviewed by the commission, just letting the applicant be aware of that. So anyway, there's that. Okay, yeah, I appreciate knowing that visibility. Do you have any photographs from the street, or did you not bother since it wasn't visible, Jackie?
We didn't take any photos of the street. I mean, Sarah and I actually were quite surprised that we couldn't see anything from the front, and we're actually walking at just the odd side of the street. We also walked in that sort of island that stands in the middle of Braddock Park, and we also crossed the street and we're going back and forth and by adjacent structures to see if we can even get an image of the mock-up. But again, there's current setback of the plans that they sent us, surprisingly, wasn't visible.
That's great. What concerns me about this photograph is that when the scaffolding and the shrouds come down, that more of that mock-up would be visible.
Sorry. So the plank, that is the very top of the roof where you see the demising wall. That's the level of the roof. There's just one single plank on top, which is about 1.5 inches on top. So you're seeing a plank on top of the roof right now. So that really isn't too far off with the visibility. It's not much built up, but yes, when you take away that, you will see the curvature as well, and that will be a little bit more visible.
Yeah, that's the point that I was making. Okay. Well, that answers my question about that. So I think
I have a question, John.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
The building to the left of the shroud with the curve.
Yes.
Is that part of your building, or is that going to be another building? Your building is going to echo that as it comes in. Will it be that same?
Correct. That's the same type of structure, but it's not our building. It's the next house over.
Okay, yeah. And so I was just looking at the railing, actually the nice railing on top of that, how it disappears behind the round.
Right.
That's then the following property. So the property right next to us has no deck on their roof right now. Yep.
And Daniel, it's you that's speaking, right?
Yes.
Is your both Bow Bay coplanar with your neighbors, meaning in the same plane? Is it forward or backward of that?
It's pretty much on the same plane.
Okay. All right. So that gives us an idea of the amount of space the scaffolding is taking up in this photograph.
Does it go flat and then the bump out?
Yeah, it does. If you look at the plan, that's what it showed.
For the building that we're seeing the curve on, I'm assuming the curve and then the flat part. And then does your building start with the curve and then another flat part? Do they twin each other, or do they they
They twin each other, so it's flat to the closest point of us right now, looking at the
Okay.
scaffolding. Then it's bow. Then the next building's flat. Then it's bow again.
So they
Yep.
repeat.
They repeat, correct?
They're not mirror image of each other.
No, they
Yeah.
repeat. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And
Thank you. That helps.
And
the Google
just-
aerial view supports that.
And just to add another image, this is one that Sarah took at the edge of Holyoke Street. So you're able to see a little bit more of a frontal image to where the proposed one
Yep.
is.
That's great. Okay. So that is the end of my questions, and we've had other questions from other commissioners. Before we go to comments, are there still yet more questions we have? If not, we can go right to comments. And I will start with Catherine. Any comments?
No, I do just wonder about the need for a subcommittee. That's all, whatever you guys think.
Uh-huh. Okay. And the comment you made earlier about the design of the metal rail.
Correct.
Okay.
There's too much. I think it should be simpler, like a fire escape balcony rail. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris.
My comment says, seems like there's a lot of things up in the air. If we could tie a few of these things down, we might have some better measurements and views, and then maybe more appropriate for us to make better comments.
That's insightful, Chris. Thank you. Felicia, comments?
Just concur with my fellow commissioners, but no further comments.
Okay. John, comments?
Of course. First, John and Catherine will probably remember that some years ago, the commission allowed several glass railings in the district as an experiment to see if they really did disappear. And unfortunately, they did not.
I think it was one we allowed.
Was it
Yeah,
one? One or two?
Yes.
One? Okay. It did not disappear. It was very visible, depending upon the angle of the sun. Occasionally not visible.
Excuse me, John, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to ask Jackie if while we're giving comments, if you can put the image of the decks showing from Braddock Park and from the alley.
Absolutely.
It was the previous image that we were just looking at, and that way we can
Will do.
Connect people's comments to the image. And John, feel free to continue. Sorry to interrupt.
So, and I think a smooth curve is not feasible, as Chris said. But a faceted curve would in fact be more visible, because any time of day when the perfect sun angle was on one, it wouldn't be on the other. Now, the context though is that if this was only visible from the Southwest Corridor, we have allowed more visibility from the Southwest Corridor because it's outside of the district and it's a public way as opposed to a street. So it may be allowable to have more visibility there. If I'll take everybody at their word that the front is not visible, but Catherine's right. If any of it was visible, it needs to be a fire escape type railing, like all of the others. The other thing is that and this is not questioning any of the applicants in any way, but dimensions do change as they get worked out and heights change. So I think it would be important to review this, knowing when the actual final maximum dimensions can be determined, and have the architect and builder provide that. So what I'm really coming to is I think it does need a subcommittee. I think the subcommittee needs to see the mock-up in place to do our due diligence, to make sure that we've seen that it is not visible from the front and not just relying on staff, and to understand what visibility there is from the rear, allowing potentially more visibility. It be set back so it's not visible or minimally visible from the street view, but allowing more from the Southwest Corridor view. And also that the mock-up be put in place after finalizing the vertical dimensions.
Mhm.
But I think this is a doable, I think this can get worked out. It's going to make some adjustments, but I think and conceptually, potentially there is a roof deck able to be approved here.
Yeah, I agree, John. Hang
Great.
on, applicants. I know you're eager to respond, but I want to just add to what John said. I think that I want to ask, actually, I want to ask the applicant, Daniel or Chris, to help me out with your construction schedule. When would you be far enough along that the scaffolding and shrouds would come down? What time of year would that be?
That is something I could probably get the, would it help to have the top layer of scaffolding removed when we do this? That could be done at any time, really.
Because reviewing the rear view of the building with the scaffolding up isn't going to really help a subcommittee.
Right.
So, you know, either we wait until your construction process moves apace and the scaffolding comes down with the shrouds along with it, and then we establish what amount of visibility is acceptable from that rear facade. Or, and this is totally your call, we don't want to interrupt the flow of your schedule, but if you want to dismantle the top floor of your scaffolding and shrouding, and that's totally up to you, in order to get an earlier decision from a subcommittee, then you can let us know if that's feasible.
I think that can be feasible, definitely.
Okay. But either way, I think the subcommittee would be most effective by going out there when the scaffolding and shroud is not obscuring the rear cornice.
Yep. And yeah, taking that first layer, you would definitely not, I mean, you'd be able to see everything from any angle of the rear of the private alley there. So if that helps, if you need me to take everything down, then we can talk. But I do believe that if we took down the first layer or two, you'd be able to visualize exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think it was really just the top floor that would be causing the obstruction.
Floor.
Based on the photographs that Jackie showed me. Would you agree, Jackie, having been out there?
Yeah, I would say that what sort of prohibits us from seeing the full mock-up certainly is just the top level of the scaffolding.
Yeah. Okay. So it does seem like a subcommittee is warranted here. It does seem like, you know, it would be best to review that back edge from, you know, without the top level of scaffolding and shrouding. And that would help us establish what level of visibility is actually acceptable here. You've already heard Commissioner Freeman say that a glass parapet is not something we can approve, which means we would be looking at, you know, a metal railing that would just be, you know, a mock-up. The mock-up would be representing not a glass parapet, but a metal railing. And John is correct. And thank you, John, for reminding me and refreshing my memory that we have accepted a little bit more visibility from the southwest corridor, given that it's not in the district, but we do have jurisdiction from it and views from it. And also it's the rear of the building and not the front. We're far more protective of the front roof profile that we want to make sure we preserve from the public streets. But this is also visible from Holyoke Street. So we have to look at that visibility as well and be protective of that view as well. And the subcommittee can be, you know, making those calls when they're out there. But as John said, you know, you're going to get an approved deck here. And right now, the footprint that you're proposing is probably the largest deck I've ever seen proposed in the South End. in the 29 years that I've been on the commission. You know, bravo to you if you get that much. That's pretty amazing. It's a beautiful design. I'm a landscape architect, and I've never seen anybody take a deck landscape to the extent that you're showing. It's beautiful, and it would be a place anybody would want to be.
Mhm.
But we also we have to be mindful that we have regulations that we're here to you know, make sure we follow. So that said, I think I would be open to a motion to set up a subcommittee, and I would be happy to be on that subcommittee if we need to know now.
I'll make the motion if somebody else wants to be on it.
I'll be on it.
Hey, Chris, thank you. I was going to draft you if you didn't say that.
Chris and I
So I'll
have
make
done
a
roof deck
motion.
subcommittees before.
Great. Yeah, I'll make a motion to remand this to a subcommittee of John and Chris with comments noted that we've already made.
I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Catherine.
Sure.
And before we go to a vote, we'll take public comment. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, how are we doing for public comment?
Yep, so we did not receive any written public comment, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we'll go to a vote. John?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Felicia?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Thank you very much for your very illustrative and clear presentation. And we'll just continue this with the subcommittee.
Good to see you, Dan.
Yeah, you too, John. Hope you're
Great,
doing
and
well.
great.
Thank you,
Good luck.
everybody. Appreciate everything in your time.
For the
You're welcome.
applicants, I will reach out and be in touch to discuss what happened in this hearing, what the deliverables are, and scheduling a time for the subcommittee.
Sounds great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And
Good
we'll go
night.
to the, good night. We'll go to the next application now when, Jackie, when you're ready. So the next application is 66 Rutland Street, and the proposed work is to install a skylight at the roof. There are also additional items under administrative review. I'll ask the applicant, after you introduce yourself and begin your presentation, that you needn't describe the items under administrative review, only the skylight.
Great. Thank you very much, John. My name is Timothy Burke. I'm the architect for the project. I have a business address of 142 Berkeley Street in Boston. And with me tonight are the owners, Naya and Gaurav Mittal. We're embarking on a renovation of this house. It has not much has happened to it in quite a while. So the Mittals have bought the house and are looking forward to moving in. They live in the neighborhood already. And as part of the work, we're trying to get some additional light into the top level, which has just one small dormer on the front. And so we're asking permission to install a low profile Velux skylight that would be a black color, and it would project 3 inches above the existing asphalt shingle roof that's on the front of the house. There are some similar ones in the block, and visibility is minimal, if at all visible, because of the slope of the roof. Great. Here you see the sort of before and after of the elevations. So the skylight is on the right-hand side. In drawing number 3, you can see it's sort of near the chimney. So that does screen most of the view from the north end of Rutland Street as you're walking south. And this building sits on the west-hand side. And that's the... we would be removing the one that's at up there high on the roof, and on the back, but I'm sorry, the front is what we're talking about, and so that's the two drawings on the right-hand side. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So I'm sorry, the one skylight you're proposing is just one?
That is correct, yes.
And it's
One on the
f-
front and one on the back?
Well, the one on the back is existing. I don't know why I
Oh.
mentioned that, but the one on the front is the one on the right-hand drawing. We show the demolition of the roof, that small area there. And the left drawing number 3 shows the skylight installed.
Okay, so there's currently no skylight on the front?
That is correct, yeah. There are
Okay.
several buildings in this row that have them, but ours does not.
Okay, great.
Staff
Okay.
would just also like to know, before heading into questions or comments, that Sarah and I did go to conduct a site visit, and we do have images of the existing property. So if that's needed, we'd be happy to pull that up.
That's great. Thank you, Jackie. So I will go to questions now. Felicia, any questions?
Maybe I missed it when you described it, but what's your preference and why?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
What
question.
is your preference of the location of the skylight and why?
Oh, it's because of the way it works with the floor plan for that top floor renovation.
Mm-hmm.
And I did like the idea of the chimney screening. It gives it a lot of screening from the view.
Mm-hmm.
And the dormer will screen it too, wouldn't it?
It would, yes. Yep.
Okay. So the ones to the right.
Correct.
Right at the dormer. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Catherine, any questions?
Just wondering, yes, John, thank you. Timothy, I did walk by there and I did see a skylight on a building a couple doors down. And you had mentioned that others have them. I wonder if, pardon me, if you're proposing a skylight of a similar size as the one that's 2 doors down, I think. They're very small.
Yeah, it is small. I don't know the size of the other one. Ours is 24 inches by 15 inches. So
Yeah.
it's fairly small. Yes.
Small.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's very helpful to actually see the building because the drawings make it look like, wow, this is just right
Yeah,
out
you're right.
there, which is not at all the case. So yeah, I think it's fine. Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Catherine, I'm sorry to interject here before others get to ask questions, but I want to ask you from what you just said. In the elevation number 3, the roof is very prominent.
Mm-hmm.
And in real life, when you're in front of the building, does the roof recede back quite a bit?
Yes, well, here it looks like it comes straight down, but it's at an angle. And I think Jackie said she had photos. I have one too. I could send one. Timothy, I don't think you showed a photo of the building, correct?
No, I did submit photographs. Yes. Yep.
Oh, but they're not in this presentation. Maybe, John, it would be helpful if Jackie
I
pulled
can
one up.
certainly pull that up.
Yeah. And while Jackie's pulling that up, Catherine, do you have any further questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Peter, any questions?
I just want to confirm, Tim, you said it's a 3-inch profile.
Correct. Yeah, it projects 3 inches above the surface of the asphalt shingle roof. It's the lowest profile one that I could find.
And just to annotate, sorry to interrupt, just to annotate for the commission what we're seeing here. This is 66 Rutland Street. This is the front of it. On the right-hand side, if you see my cursor, I believe this is the skylight that Catherine is mentioning. And then right here is the around this area, just above the dormer, to the staff's understanding, is the proposed skylight.
That is correct. Yes.
Very helpful, Jackie.
Yeah, that's interesting, Jackie. Actually, I was looking at the one 2 doors down to the left.
Ah.
I didn't even spot that one. I just sent you that photo. That's interesting. Thank you. Huh. So there's a couple right there around the building.
Yes, there are, yes. Yeah.
Can you show one of them?
Right there.
There's one
Yeah,
on
this
to
one
the
right.
right.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's about 3 inches as well.
Yeah.
Man, they're hidden well. I can't even see them. It's on the building to the right, after the space. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have things hiding it, so let me get rid of them here. There you go. Thank you. You were right over the top of it, Catherine.
Okay. Oh,
Thank
I
you.
am? Pardon me, all to pieces.
Thank you.
Jackie, I did send a photo of the one on the other side.
Great. And then if any of the commissioners would like me to pull up that photo, Catherine, did you send it to me via email or phone number?
Oh, it was a text.
Okay.
I hope that went through, but not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm not quite getting it.
Okay.
And these buildings.
Chris,
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to invite you to ask more questions, but carry on.
Read my mind. At one point, but before this this building in the middle fell over and it turned into a public park, were they in the same plane with the same roof angle?
The roof angles don't look the same to me. Certainly the front's all lined up, but I think it's a different roof shape, it looks like to me.
So it's just a single point on the left one, and it's got a flat roof on the one on the right.
It does seem to have like almost like a mansard look to it. Yeah.
The roof on the right is steeper and it has that broken gable or mansard.
Right.
The property, the applicant's property is a single gable, and so it's not as steep a roof. So the skylight would be less visible than the one on the right.
Jackie, that was an email. Forgive me.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all, John.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Felicia, did I get to you for questions?
You did.
Okay. Peter, questions?
You got to me. So.
Oh, I did. Okay.
Yep.
I think I've asked my questions. So we can go to comments. Peter, why don't you comment?
Yeah, I also toured the street and looked at the building and the roofs. I feel this is a pretty benign intervention, both given the low profile, the limited visibility, and the small size of the skylight. So they're even across the street. There are bubble skylights, which certainly were not approved by the commission, and even they are not that visible. So I could support this application.
Thank you, Peter. Felicia?
No comments. I would agree with everything that Peter said, and I would be in support.
Okay, thank you. Catherine. Oh, no, Catherine. Yes, Catherine, you can comment. Sorry.
That's okay.
Comment away.
I'll comment away. I agree with Peter and Felicia. Nicely done, Timothy.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Chris?
No, I also support it. It hurts me to see a skylight come out of a beautiful picture. Reasonableness.
Okay. John?
I agree. I think it's fine.
Okay. I just want to ask one more question of Tim. Tim, I'm sorry if I missed this in your explanation, but is the glass in the skylight flat or bubbled?
It's a flat, yeah, very flat. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. As low profile as you can make it.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then I have no additional comments.
I'm very familiar with this, with the Velux skylights, and this is very low profile.
Yeah, great.
Tim's right, it's the thinnest you can get.
Yeah,
The lowest.
and you're going with black non-reflective?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, so I would be ready to entertain a motion.
I move approval of this application as submitted.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded. Let's go to public comment. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. Sarah, anybody want to comment?
So we did not receive any written public comment, and I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we'll go to a vote. Peter.
Aye.
Felicia.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Tim and your applicants, I believe, are still on the call. I just want to let you know that, you know, removing visible original fabric is not something we do lightly. And this is a case where the visibility is minimal enough that we could approve it. But I just want to make that stated for the record, just for other people listening in as well. Because again, we preserve original fabric to the extent we can. But you know, well done in choosing the least you know, adverse location for this on a building that could tolerate it. Doesn't happen often. So well done.
All right, well, thank you very much and have a good night. Yes.
Yeah, you too. Good luck.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the next application now, which is 849 Harrison Avenue. Proposed work is to install one backlit channel letter sign titled, I won't pronounce this correctly, but I'll say Gifu Teriyaki and Sushi, with an opaque background board that's 11 inches by 144 inches. And if the applicant is here, please introduce yourself and present your proposal.
Hello everyone, my name is Josie from AZ Sign. We're doing signage for Gifu Teriyaki and Sushi. We would like to installating a backlit channel letter for this location at 849 Harrison Ave. So this is the main entrance for the business. So we would like to install channel letter, a backlit channel letter sign for the business. So the most customer, they noting the entrance since they already closing the front entrance at 705 Mass Ave. And they do takeout for their business. So if they could have their backlit channel letter for this entrance, it will be very helpful for their business. And the background board will be opaque, will be 11 inches by 144 inches. And the channel letter will be 7.24 inches high for the letters. And the lighting will be on the back, and then we will also applying a dimmer to adjust the brightness at night.
And then Josie, just let me know if you'd like me to go to the next slide.
Yes, can we go through the next slide? So the sign, so here's the signage for how to mount into the building. The whole signage will be attached to the brick wall as showing on the first. Can we go back to the first page? So for the orange rectangle area, so this is how the sign will be attached to the building. And can we go back to the second page? So the transformer will be putting on the background board. So and the all the dimension is showing on the second page. And the total length for the signage, it would be 144 inches. The entrance, the length of the entrance is 133 inches. So we will be a little bit longer than the entrance, for the storefront entrance. So this is how the sign will look like for Gifu Teriyaki.
Okay. Jackie, can you go back to the second image that shows the specifications? I'm just looking at the text on the right, and I just want to understand the materials being proposed. And okay, I've read what I need to read. Thank you. So we can go to questions. And is that the end of your presentation, Josie?
Yes.
Okay. So John, do you have any questions?
On this drawing that you have up, I see where it says LED modules. What is that is pointing to what material, and what is the material adjacent to it?
For the LED module?
Mm-hmm.
So the LED module is in the visual to attaching to the, because the face will be the aluminum, and then the LED module will be the plastic, and then to mounting to the ladders, and then the lighting will be reflecting on the back of the background board.
So what are the letters made of?
The ladders light up?
Made of.
What are they made?
What are they constructed? What material are they?
It's aluminum.
Yeah. So
And
on
the
the
back-
right side, John, it says face is white or red aluminum, and the returns are white or red aluminum.
Okay. And where in that, so the blue that you have, or what looks blue on my computer as the background board, where is that in that section?
So in the section, you can see the point out for the mounting brackets. So you're putting the blue area is where the LED power supply put on. This square will be showing on the cross section, showing this is the blue aluminum panel.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's
So-
helpful. So the letters are quite thick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, good. That's my only question right now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. And Felicia, any questions?
Is there a sort of an image of a night image that shows sort of the brightness of the sign on the street, or some sort of animation? If it hasn't actually been posted at this point, it seems like it might be quite bright on the street.
I don't have the exact picture on the presentation, but I do send a sample to in the email before, showing how the BRADDOCK signage will look like at nighttime.
Is everything lit up? The red, the white, the blue? Yeah.
Yes, I don't have the picture in the presentation. I have something in my phone, so I'm not sure if everyone can see it. So this is another signage is showing
I'm gonna just chime in really quick, Josie, because you have the blurred background in your
so I'm
settings.
so
So if you
sorry.
turn that off, and you can,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
if
I'm
you'd
so
like, you can email me that image and I could show it on the presentation so the commissioners can see a
would you
little bit
mind if
better.
I emailed you this picture?
And the sign spans the entire width of the retail space, correct? Did I?
Of the door opening.
Of the door
The door
opening.
opening.
The Right, so the entire, it spans the entire, okay.
It looks like it goes further and overlaps.
Well, it has to because there's
Into
nothing
the-
behind the blue panel
Right,
until
So-
you reach the brick on either side.
so that's where the attachments are.
That's where the attachments occur, which is surrounded by the orange rectangle.
So that's why I was, you know, if Jacqueline, if you can show that, I mean, it really presents on the street during the day, and if everything is highly lit, I'm just wondering, you know, how that, what that looks like in the evening.
Although, Felicia,
Uh-huh.
my understanding of what's being presented
Is
that
more like this?
more like that, yes.
Okay,
Solid letters that are silhouetted against the backlight.
Right.
I see, I
Yeah,
see.
ignoring
okay.
the blade sign, that's
Yeah,
right
Much
there.
better.
Ignore the
left
blade
is-
sign.
The
Much
left is not
better.
allowed, the right is allowed.
Okay, great. So happy to see this. Okay.
Yeah. You can
No,
see how bright the left sign actually is.
exactly. That was sort of what my
Your worry was.
Yeah, my worry
Mhm.
was.
Yeah. We don't actually allow that in the district.
Okay,
That-
good.
That kind of signage where you can see the source of the light,
Yeah.
is not allowed, but the backlit channel letter,
Is.
is allowed.
Okay, great. I didn't think it was allowed, but I was just wanting to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's
Very-
always worth asking because the term channel letter often refers to letters that are translucent. It's the shape of the construction that's called the channel.
Mhm.
So channel letters are not always opaque, so it's always worth asking.
Okay.
So,
No further questions.
No further questions. Thank you, Felicia.
Thank you.
Peter, did I get to you yet?
You
With
have,
questions? Okay.
could we go to the drawing? I have two questions. So, I just, on the cross section, I just want to confirm that the rectangle that we see on the left is not a rectangle. It's actually the shape of the letters only. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the shape of the letter because I'm showing on the side view.
Yep. Okay. And my other question is, did you consider a blade sign as an alternative to this?
No, I think no brace side for here because for the brace side, based on the regulation, the minimum height from the ground to the side bottom, it at least have 96 feet. Sometimes we will consider at least 10 feet high from the side bottom. So for this area, we cannot do the brace side right here.
Okay. I was having a little difficulty hearing you. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, are you asking for us to consider a brace side?
Yes.
Yes, that was the question.
Okay, no, we won't do the brace side right here since for here, there has the high limit for the brace side. For the brace side from the ground to the side bottom, at least had 96 inches from the side bottom. So for here, you can see in the first page from the side bottom, they already have 96. And then for the brace side, each brace side, if you want it to be visible, at least 18 inches for the brace side. So it will be over for the second floor. And also it has to be attached for to the brown area. So, and this is not allowable to.
Did you get that, Peter?
I didn't get the 80 inches.
It
90
was
just
96 inches from
Yep,
the sidewalk to
from
the
the
bottom of the
sidewalk,
sign.
but
Yeah, you can't have a sign below that on a public way.
yep, I understand that. But did you also say something about 80 inches?
Yeah, this is the sample I wanted to explaining to you to if doing the brace side. So we at least doing 18 inches. So, and then it will be over to the second floor. So which is not allowing to.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah,
I have
Okay.
another question when you're,
go ahead, John.
so in the first picture that you have that shows the sign on the storefront, it looks like it's below the brownstone band. But in this drawing, it's attached to a wall. So I was assuming that it was inset in the window, in the masonry opening, the recess. So I'm not sure where the sign is attached.
The sign will be can you yeah, on the first page. So the sign will be attached to the brick wall. It won't
Only at
over.
either end?
Yes, it won't be
So-
attached to the brown. You see the sign above area. It won't be attached this area.
Okay, so in that drawing, it's just attached at both ends.
Mhm.
And it could probably be, got it, all right. So how much, okay, no, okay, got it. Thank you.
Is that it, John?
Mm-hmm. I
Okay,
think so.
great.
Until the
Catherine,
next one.
okay. Catherine, questions?
Well, probably question and comment at the same time. I'm a little puzzled because there's significant signage on this building. The restaurant goes, you know, up to Mass Ave, and the signage that's on Mass Ave and wraps around the corner onto Harrison Avenue does not look anything like this signage. So my question is, why this new design that has nothing to do with the existing signage?
So for the existing signage, because we are not the sign company doing the front sign at 705 Mass Ave, and I look around for the signage in 705 Mass Ave. This is the green, I remember it's the green background and with the white letter and red letters. And I guess this one is based on the existing storefront facade color, so that's why it's true they keeping the green color for the whole storefront in the 705 Mass Ave. And for the new sign in Harrison Ave, so because the business owner they wanted to keep using the blue color. This is the Japanese restaurant, so they wanted to keep using the blue color because they're doing sushi, so they wanted the blue color to be more shine for the sign.
Well, it conflicts with the identity of the business. Jackie, I emailed you several photos of this building that show the existing signage, if people don't recall it.
Yeah, if any of the commissioners would like me to pull up those images, I'd be
I
happy
think that'd
to.
be helpful.
It'd be great.
Perfect.
So that's the Mass Ave side, and it used to be an entry in addition to the one on Harrison Avenue.
Can you show, do you have a picture of the other corner?
Yes,
So you can
there's,
see the two at the same time? So
oh,
once
I
you
see
put
what
it,
you're asking, yeah.
well,
And then there's another image that shows the corner wrapping from
yeah, that's the
Mass
one. I
Ave to
think that's,
Harrison.
So is the idea, what you're describing, Catherine, you've got 2 out of the 3 signage locations are keeping with the color scheme that's in the area, and the moment that you turn the corner, it's
Yeah.
but for the red, it's a completely different color
Yeah,
scheme.
yeah,
Could be
I
a
mean,
different
that's-
restaurant, yeah.
That's the
I thought I
corner.
heard them say they were going to try to differentiate their takeout business from that side Harrison door.
Well,
Hmm.
even the logo of the restaurant is
Yeah, it's
different.
different.
It's,
Font is different, yeah.
Jackie,
it's
can you
confusing.
pull up the Google Street View? Because I think it's really useful. And look at it right from the corner.
The photos I took also show the lights that have been installed into the brick. I don't know when that was done, but
So go up to Mass Ave.
Looks like the
Oh.
oh, here it is, 2020.
Yeah, there you go. So the sign application is on the left edge above the guy with the hard
Yes.
hat.
Yeah, the far left.
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, it makes it look like two different businesses. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the same visit because the previous business showing in the Google map, the they selling the business to another owner. So
Mhm.
for now, they wanted before this location they doing a lot of dine-in, but now they close for dine-in. They do a lot of takeout right now, so they only open for one entrance for in Harrison Ave, and the business owner wanted to showing the sign to let customer know and also letting the drivers know they open the entrance right here. So they wanted to showing they don't using the front entrance anymore, and then this is the main entrance for the store. And for the logo you mentioned is for Gifu because they wanted to using the writing is more formal to showing the holes is more easy to reading to showing the customer know.
Is the entrance at the corner of Harrison and Washington, is that still going to stay in place?
It's Mass Ave, Felicia.
I'm sorry, yes, Mass Ave and Harrison.
Yes, studio praise.
So you can still enter there and sit there. No, you cannot, right?
They didn't open it because they closed and they locked the door. It cannot be accessed.
It's no longer accessible.
Yeah, the only access for this this restaurant is for the location in Harrison Ave.
Mm.
Because when I entered this business, the front in in Mass Ave, they turn off the light. They and they lock the door. So they didn't open this area for the customer.
One entrance, customer seating in the front now, it sounds like. Entrance on Harrison, seating in the front, in the green part now.
Chris, what was your question again? I heard you, but I didn't understand it.
No, the question was that I heard her say that they closed the front part now and they've opened it up for customers. So my assumption, which is always wrong, is that the one entrance now is on Harrison, and that they can go in and that's a customer seating area now, maybe to eat in. Huge assumption, but
I think she's saying that that's the only entrance at this point is the one off of Harrison that's being proposed for the new sign.
Right.
Even though the storefront on Harrison and Mass Ave will continue, there is no access there.
Regardless of how it's used on the inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
who hasn't asked questions yet? I've lost track because we've had a little bit of an informal discussion here. Has anybody not asked questions yet? If not, are there more questions we need to be asking before we go to comments?
Well, I guess my question is why the color scheme is completely different from what's already there, which was chosen to kind of blend in with the architecture of the building. If you look at the Orioles and how, the paint and the paint on the storefront on Mass Ave that goes around the corner was to make some sort of cohesive statement with the rest of the building.
Right. Before we go to comments, I actually have some questions about the cross section, because I haven't really had a chance to ask questions yet, and I've got a burning question that no one else has asked yet. So, Jackie, when you can get back to the presentation and page 2, on the cross section on the left, Peter asked about the rectangle on the left and if that represented the letter, and we learned that yes, that represents the letter. The rectangle in the middle, the rectangle on the far right with the cross hatching is the building. The rectangle in the middle is the blue background sign panel. The way that's drawn, Josie, I want you to explain this to me. It looks to me like we're seeing the hollow side of this 2-inch thick three-sided cross section, that the solid side is against the building and the open side is facing the street.
The open side will be facing to the blue aluminum panel. So the face you see for the specification, the face will be the white or red aluminum, which is non-illuminated. So it will be aluminum, and the return will be also aluminum. The only opening is on the back, which is reflecting to the blue aluminum panel.
So the blue aluminum panel it has a solid front.
Yes.
Okay, that's not the way the cross section is drawn. The cross section is drawn to show solid on three sides: the top, the side against the building, and the bottom. And the left edge of that rectangle is a single line, which suggests that the blue panel has an open side facing the street. If that's not correct, we would need you to correct the drawing to show the double line that is on the three sides, also on the fourth side.
I think that, if I might jump in here, it looks like there's an L bracket holding up that shows the double sign. There's an L bracket on the top and the bottom where the 4 screws are. And so I think the rectangle that is the blue is just one single line. And I think the L brackets on the top and the bottom overlap that single line of to me, it looks like a solid piece of aluminum.
I think you're right, Chris.
The panel, Chris, you're right. The panel is held away from the building, the thickness of the L bracket.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was confusing me. It looked like the space between the panel and the building was actually the panel itself. Never mind. So now I understand the construction. That answers my question. You're okay, Josie.
Thank you.
Yes. So we're ready for comments. Catherine, I want to hear your comments. We've heard some already, but I want to hear them again.
Thanks, John. Well, I still will express concern that the signage does not relate to the existing signage, whether or not that door is open or not, and it just takes away from the it's just not integrated with the rest of the building. And I'm puzzled about that. I just don't know why they would change the identity of their corporate brand, which, you know, it's conflicting with what's already there, just as I said, despite whether they're using that entry or not. And I don't think the proposed color scheme goes well with the rest of the building. I've said it all before, I guess. I don't know what else to say. And you know, what they're proposing is going into the masonry, into the brick of the building, which is not appropriate.
Well, it would be if they're only going into the joints, but that's not clear.
No, it's not. No.
So we would have to clarify that. Even if we were to allow this, we would have to make sure that that was clarified. But anything further, Catherine?
No, I think I've probably said enough.
Uh-huh. And we can always come back to you if you feel you haven't.
Thank you.
Yeah. Peter.
Yeah. Jackie, could you go back to page 1 of this? Thank you. So I share Catherine's concerns about the disharmony of the overall signage. I think at a minimum, the Gifu should be in the same style as the existing in terms of the script or logo or whatever we want to call it. And I know this is a mock-up and it's difficult to envision how it's going to look exactly, but my suggestion would be that this would be lowered ever so slightly so that there's a space across the top that puts a slight gap at least between the top of the sign and the brownstone band. Just looks like it's kind of thrown up there in this rendering.
Good idea.
Okay. Peter, was there anything else?
That's all for now.
Okay, good observations. Felicia, any comments?
Nothing more than what other commissioners have stated. The disconnect that Catherine has pointed out is just becoming more and more glaring to me. And I guess I'm just not understanding what the objective is. If it's to guide people that this is the new entrance, I don't know that that's going to happen. If it's to guide them that it's the takeout entrance, I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm just not. It looks like it could be two very different restaurants that just had similar names if people weren't paying very close attention to the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know our purview within this kind of a situation, John.
I think with the issue of cohesion, I think we have some purview there to call for the cohesion that I'm already hearing about.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't worry about commenting on that.
John, may I, Felicia gave me an idea. Maybe the sign is just incorrect. Maybe it needs to say Gifu takeout or whatever. Maybe that would help clarify what they're trying to do here.
Then if you're not doing takeout, where do you go?
I was under the impression that that's all they're doing. Maybe is
that all you're doing,
correct?
Josie, is takeout? You no longer have an eat-in restaurant?
They still have the space so you can see the picture in the first page. They still have the table for this entrance still light on. So they still have the table here. So I guess people can dine in, but it's not open for the front entrance and not open for the front entrance area they dine in. They still have a couple tables showing in the first page.
Okay.
So if you're changing the main entrance, which it seems like that's what this is trying to do, you're just trying to change the main entrance of the restaurant. Are there any obligations or conformances that have to be met? I'm assuming that even on this side of the street, it's still within the South End Landmarks district. I don't know if it's as rigorous as the Mass Ave and Harrison side, but again, I don't know, what you're trying to accomplish. Is there any reason why you wouldn't remove the signage on the Mass Ave side so that it would be crystal clear that the main entrance to this new retail space is here and not on Mass Ave?
Wow, that's a big job.
Yeah, but I Is it because I'm having a hard time understanding. I thought the emphasis had shifted from sit down to takeout, and that was sort of the driver of this new prominent entrance, but it doesn't sound like that is actually the case.
Sounds like also good advertising on Mass Ave right now. I don't know if I was a business owner.
I think you pass. Yeah, right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like you want to maintain the presence on Mass Ave, but that's not your entrance.
If you want to answer the question though about is it in the district, the whole building is in the district, Harrison Avenue, this side of Harrison Avenue is in the district.
Fully with all of the overlays and fully in the district. Okay.
All the way to the center line of the road.
Just as important.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
So, and we've reviewed lots of alterations or improvements to this building in the past.
And do all the alterations in terms of signage sort of match what we're seeing on Mass Ave, or is there?
Well, the alterations completely obliterated previous signage and replaced them with new on the Mass Ave side. That whole storefront is new. It replaced a completely different storefront before.
Yeah.
Is that a storefront that's next to this, or is that just?
No, I'm talking about the Mass Ave corner. That's painted green with the original signage. That's all that's new compared to what was there before.
Right. So I'm asking on Harrison Avenue, is this the only retail or commercial space?
For that building, yes.
Yeah.
For that building. There's more retail down the street. There's a pizza shop, pizza stop.
But for this building, those two window panes on either side of this sign, that is not retail or commercial.
And
good question. What happens in those spaces?
Yeah, do you span if you scan to the left or to the right? Well, to the right is the restaurant. What's happening to the left?
Those windows and that space was originally part of a restaurant that was there.
But it is vacant now.
I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
Is
I
it
have
vacant?
a point of interest for us. I don't know how important it is, but you realize that this entrance right here, this portion, this is a completely different building than the building on the corner of Mass Ave and Harrison.
Yeah, it's almost as though it used to be loading, or it's a
that,
secondary entrance. Yeah,
but no, I mean it's a different building.
Well, the buildings are connected into one building.
I'm saying yes, but on the exterior, if you look at the windows, you look at the Orioles, you look at the bump out, they are two different buildings. They might be connected inside, just like the French restaurant next door. Two different buildings. They have interior restaurant that spans the two. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's important to this.
Well, I'm not sure it's relevant, but you are correct. The first building, the front on Mass Ave, was constructed in 1862. This was in the back on Harrison was later.
Okay, so
yeah, I guess my last comment to the proponent is, are they wedded to the blue? I know you mentioned that there was some affiliation with the blue and sushi, and if I heard that correctly.
But the front says sushi too.
That's right.
It says teriyaki and sushi. It says both
same
of these things twice.
Yeah. Whether Felicia, whether she's wedded to it or not is not really our issue.
Yeah.
And
what is your issue? That's what we're here to hear.
I think if we're trying to create a sense of place with several entrances on several elevations, at the very least, the consistency with signage might be a good way to inform the public of sort of what's happening.
So if I were, I agree. If I were looking to come into this establishment and I mistakenly went to the door on Mass Ave and it were locked and there was a little sign saying, go to the side entrance on Harrison Ave, that would be the end of it.
Yeah.
And I'd walk around the corner to this entrance, whether it was blue or green. Yep. So,
okay, but why do we do master planning for buildings, for signage? Yeah. This is the issue. We are very stringent about master plans for signage for buildings. Now this conflicts with that whole, approach.
What does? adding a sign here altogether?
Well,
Having,
not adding a sign that is not
Having a
necessarily
sign
in
that's-
conformance.
it's completely different. You know, we would
No,
never
but what
approve
if the
that.
sign were to match the front? That was your one comment, Catherine, match the
Correct.
front.
Yes.
So what if the sign, what if we gave her comments that said match the front signage in
Right.
color and font choices?
I would think that would be in line with what we typically do
Mm-hmm.
regarding master planning signage for one building.
I think we
Right.
also have to recognize what we're hearing from these people. I think that they said that they were also changing maybe the way they were doing their business.
Well,
Okay,
that's where that's where
Well, we
the-
can't help them with that.
I know
Yeah.
we can. That's what we're talking about. We're talking
Right.
about the confusion for the clients. And we said, I think we should say, does this sign meet our requirements? Is it appropriate? Is it going to not be attached in the wrong place? Are we going to get all
Right.
of the things that say this is a good sign? That's where we should stop. If they're selling their business, if the new business wants to change, who are we to say, let's go all blue and green and red in the front and change it back to the sign? Let them run their business. Let's tell them what we think. Let's include for them what is our purview. Let them run their businesses.
Yeah. So is there a comment in there, Chris?
Oh, there was a lot of them. There was a lot of them. I think that, from what I've heard, Josie say, they're changing. They've got some new owners. I think they're changing the way they do their business. We shouldn't impair what they're trying to do. It might be a little bit visually obtrusive or not discordant for the moment, but let's move on with what they're asking. I think, and it's a sign. Your front door is not always painted the same color as your back door.
It
Yep.
is when you're in front of the commission and we're reviewing signage for a building. We stipulate that there must be a master plan for signage that is conforming with each other, and this doesn't. So that's
Yeah.
where we are. That's where we are.
I agree, and I'm just trying to be reasonable in our purview and help them with their signage. And it might
Well-
be temporary. I bet these buildings are going to be here a hell of a lot longer than that sign's going to be there.
That's right. But in the meantime, we have to look at the sign.
And we are.
So anyway, who hasn't commented yet?
I
Peter?
have not.
Oh, John.
Yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I disagree, or I agree with the whole discussion previously. The only thing I would say is just the sign. I don't have a problem with their sign being here. I think the sign has to be supported by the soffit and not extend past the face of the building. So it'd be supported on both sides in the brick joints and the soffit. So
That's very clever. So you
Sure.
use the side of the brick, not the front of the brick, to support the
Mhm.
sign.
and put it in the inset so it doesn't overlap the
On the existing brick.
Yeah,
I like that. And with Peter's 1 inch at the top.
right. And with Peter's 1 inch at the top, right.
yeah, with Peter's, including
and-
Peter's inch.
That's right. And with of course the attachments going into joints and not into the brick itself.
Yeah, and it
But-
could still have the inch and be supported from the soffit.
Right. So I will just support what I heard from Catherine and Felicia saying, I think the background panel needs to be the same green as the front. And going to what Peter said, let's have the channel letter fonts match the fonts on the front and have it look like the same business. If they want to keep the signage on Mass Ave and the Mass Ave and Harrison Corner because of its visibility, that means it's the same business.
Mhm.
And the font should look the same. They should match. It just looks sloppy to have, this Arial or Helvetica bold
Yep.
on the front when you've got other fonts. I mean, on this entrance, when you've got other fonts on the front. So that's what I would say is, the red and the white already match the letter colors for the same words on the front. The fonts need to match though, and the background should be green. And I really like John's suggestion of insetting it, because the current mounting looks awkward and not architecturally sensitive at all.
Pigeon leg.
It looks kind of slapped up there.
You could also damage, yeah.
Yeah. So those would be my comments, and I would love to hear somebody turn this into a motion.
Before doing that, John, it's Peter. I would
Yeah.
like to offer a further comment
Yeah, go ahead.
and a couple of comments, I guess. And I fully subscribe to Felicia and Catherine's comments about the need for uniformity and what is de facto a master plan for this building. But my first comment is, I think the letters are too large, given they need to be shrunk slightly. They look like they're, frankly, they look like they're crammed on there to the maximum. So I think they need to be shrunk some, so there's somewhat more background. And we could, I don't think we have to go as far as what's on the front of the building, but there is more of a background on the front signage. And my other comment, don't choke too hard, is we either require the background of this sign to be green, or if they're determined to have it blue, then they need to repaint the front storefront blue so it matches.
Well, both of those are really good comments, Peter. I don't think we could require them to repaint the front because it's wood and we don't have jurisdiction of the color of paint on wood.
No, but we're giving them a choice of approving the sign, so that.
Yeah, but contingent on requiring them to do something we don't have jurisdiction over sounds a little messy to me.
Just to chime in here, yeah, we don't have purview over paint color.
As on wood. We do have purview over paint color on masonry.
We do not have paint. We do not have purview over paint color on
No,
wood.
and I understand that, and I understand it could be messy, but then I would say I've offered my opinion, so the sign makers heard that opinion. So we can approve the background of the sign as green, and if that's not acceptable to them, then
they could come back to us.
They can come back to us, correct.
Right. And Peter, your first comment, I especially appreciate because the scale of the letters was bothering me and I neglected to say something about it. So thank you for speaking up. And I agree with you that the scale of the letters look too big for the banner, that the sign band that they're sitting on, and they need to be shrunk along with matching the font of the front text.
And all they have to do is match the aesthetic, the entire aesthetic of the original signage. That's what, you know,
that's what we're after.
Yeah.
That's what we're after.
The letters,
but we're giving them very specific instructions on how to do that.
well, the letters on the original signage are not screaming or looking out of scale. There's a lovely aesthetic. That's all
there is.
Yeah.
You're right. And
John, I'd like to offer one more comment, but go ahead.
Okay, now. Peter, you're on a roll.
Yeah. Commissioner Freeman's comment about modifying the mounting, I would say this should be shrunk so that the ends do not butt right up against the masonry, but they're pinned in so that there is at least some gap between the edge of the brick and the signage.
I think that would happen by the way they're showing the mounting with the L brackets. The L bracket would wrap around the top corner and the bottom corner, and the thickness of the L bracket itself, the gauge of the bracket, would hold the sign band off of the brick by that dimension. If you wanted it greater than that dimension, then you'd have to say so.
My thought is there should be a noticeable void between the ends of the sign and the brick,
Okay.
whether
That
it's
might-
1 inch or 2 inches or whatever.
Yeah, that would require a different kind of mounting then, and they
Right.
would have to come back to us or go to staff with the details of that. Which they could do. We've asked applicants to do that plenty of times. So if I actually like your suggestion, Peter, and I think floating within that space would look better than the ends of the sign band connecting with the opening. So I would support that. If the applicant would have to come back with a mounting detail, or not come back, but certainly go to staff with a mounting detail for that. If other commissioners agree with Peter's observation, and I do, I would love to hear a motion, or Peter, feel free to make the motion yourself. And hope that you'll get a second.
Okay, I'll attempt a motion. That we approve the application submitted with the following modifications. That the font styles should replicate the existing signage on the Mass Ave elevation of the building and the very corner of the building. That the background currently proposed is a blue background, match the same color of green as is found on the storefront edition on the front. That the size of the text on the signage, the letters, shall be shrunk to be more in proportion to the overall dimension of the rectangular sign band. That the sign box itself, the background, what's currently blue, proposed as green by the commission, that it is shrunk so that it fits within the opening of the masonry opening, that it is attached to the side of the masonry opening in a manner that gives a noticeable void to the right and the left ends of the sign, and that the top of the sign also have a void between from that and the brownstone band that is at least an inch, but something that reads as a noticeable void.
Well done, Peter. And do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded. We're going to go to public comment then, Jackie. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, has anybody wanted to comment by raising their hand or mailing in their comments?
Yeah, so I don't see any hands raised, but we did receive one written comment from Chris Berry. And it states the sign should be set within the existing masonry opening, not bolted to the face brick. It should be cohesive with the existing sign and building elements. This proposal is devoid of thought and consistency of signage overall. End of comment.
Well, it sounds like the public would support the motion then.
Well, excuse me, John, I want to make sure that the applicant that was a very complicated motion. And in essence, we're asking that they just follow the aesthetics and the design, the appearance of the original signage. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there about the background should be the background, this, that, and the other thing. It's very simple. It has to look like what's already there. Isn't that it?
It is.
It's a large part of it, but it's not all of it.
No, there's a construction component. I understand that, but I want to make sure that Josie understands and is clear on what we're really saying here.
So staff will, just to jump in here for the commission and the applicant's purpose, after this hearing concludes the day of or 2 days after, once staff has fully reviewed the hearing, and we'll certainly go back to this hearing recording to make sure that we have all the elements, we will present it to Josie and be in communication with her to make sure that all of the feedback has been utilized in the revised design, and that it is emblematic of what the commission has mentioned specifically on the design and construction elements.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackie.
Of course.
Okay, so having heard public comment, we're going to go to a vote now. Peter.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Felicia.
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion, so the motion carries. Thank you very much, Josie. Good luck, and you can work with staff on this moving forward.
Yep, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So, John, I'm going to step away.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. So considering that Chris is stepping away, Catherine, you can now be a voting member in the commission.
Oh, Chris, are you leaving for the meeting?
I'm leaving. Thank you. I've been sick for 2 weeks. And
okay. Feel better. Thanks.
Okay.
Happy to step in.
Okay, so 35. Okay, create an addition to an existing. I was looking at the wrong part of the agenda. Sorry. So 35 Bradford Street, create an addition to an existing single-family house with garage. So if the applicant is here, please introduce yourself and present your project.
Good evening. I think I'm getting the video to work now. Sorry if it's a little dark. My name is Christopher Barry. I'm here as the architect representing the project. I believe that the owner, Campbell Edlund, is also on the call. She may be muted at the moment.
I made her host.
Did Cammy just chime in?
No, I did, Jacqueline, staff.
Jacqueline.
I just want to let you know that the owner also was made a co-host.
Okay. Just a note, there's no way for me to raise my hand on this system. I've been here for 2.5 hours and I cannot find any way to raise my hand. Just so there must be some glitch.
Yeah, where it says react, if you click, leave your cursor sitting there, it will come up. Or you click on where it said the word react, not the arrow.
I do not have the word react on my screen.
Well, that's not going to work then. Okay.
So,
wow.
I did submit comments on Braddock Park that they're in the record, I think now.
I think they read your comments.
Yeah. No, for a different project, they did not read my comment.
Yeah, it was sent after. We just didn't get it during the public comment period, but as I shared with Chris, it will be shared for the upcoming subcommittee hearing.
Okay. So let's probably get started on this project. And I think it'd be good if I could share my screen.
You should be able to share your screen.
Great, thank you very much.
And thank you all for your patience in lasting through the evening to listen to our presentation.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your patience.
It's not our
So-
first rodeo.
Yes, exactly. And the point being, we have been to the committee twice now. We've had 2 advisory hearings prior to this hearing this evening. I do not believe Mr. Sanborn was in either one of the 2 prior hearings, so this might be new to him, but the other members were present. The first hearing resulted in what a sense is a rejection of the entire proposal. We completely redesigned the project from the first hearing to the second hearing. In the second hearing, we did not receive any comments about redesign. We were asked to provide some additional background photographs of the area which are included in this presentation. So to get started, we'll just quickly review some of the things we've seen in the past, which is these are pictures of the existing building located at 35 Bradford Street, which is bordered also on Peters Park and Wilkes Passage, which is a pedestrian street currently.
Chris, I'm seeing you in the video, not the presentation. I'm not sure if that's true for
Oh.
others.
Same.
I don't know.
Not that it's not appealing to see you speak, but
Okay, let's do share and share. Did that change it?
changing. Wait just a moment.
Changing. We haven't seen the image yet.
Now we see a beautiful shot of the Cape.
Okay.
So now if you bring up the presentation, which you were very close to just a moment ago.
It's up on my screen.
We just see a screen of
Share.
your desk. We just see your desktop right now.
Is that better?
So you there.
There we go.
There we go.
Think. Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Good. Glad we got that figured out. Thank you very much. So these 6 pictures
Chris,
are
can you
of the-
maximize it? Because we're still seeing your screen. We're seeing the images, but we're basically seeing your screen.
I don't know what that refers to.
I think that's a good step. Yeah, that's better.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's filling the screen more.
What you could do is in the middle above the presentation, there's a plus sign. You might be able to increase the size just a bit for those who are on smaller screens at their homes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work on
better.
I work on a 24-inch monitor, so they're large to me.
Architects, they have such amazing technology.
Yeah.
Thank you. So can everybody see the 6 photographs of the existing building? And
yes.
Is that okay? Good. So these pictures were included in the prior 2 presentations. The next set of slides, these are additional photographs of the surrounding area, including the street, Bradford Street, and more pictures of Wilkes Passage, which is our direct abutter.
Also important is that view from Peters Park on the upper right.
Yes, this is our building right here, this blank facade which faces Peters Park.
Important because we have very much focused on improving the connectivity to Peters Park and improving the historic relevance of that blank facade, which has obviously no relevance to anything at all except the ivy which covers it.
We have a series of historic references, which we've gone through to South End Historic to drag these out. Many of these references were used in the redesign of the project. Based on the recommendations of the committee, they wanted to see an Italianate style roof, which we found many references of those particular types of roofs in the South End.
And a picture of the building in its ancient state.
Yeah. We have other reference pictures associated with other buildings in the neighborhood, which have some element of similarity relative to what we're doing. And some more additional historic photographs of specifically some Italianate style roofs in these on the left and on the right. And some more references on, these are mostly directly related. They're Tremont Street, Washington Street. There's even some on Shawmut Avenue. So these are very close to our structure. Of course, most of these are wood and they're no longer in existence. I would like to turn to the zoning page, which illustrates what used to be on this site very clearly. And that is here. So our site, if you can see my cursor, is on this corner of what was Acton Street, which is no longer in existence. Bradford Street is diagonally on your screen, and Wilkes Passage is to sort of the bottom. That's a pedestrian way. And sandwiched in between Acton, Wilkes, and Bradford is our entire site. The existing structure sits on the upper corner of our site, and the remainder of the site is now empty, or parking and yard area. You can see from the historical maps that this was a zero lot line property, meaning that all these, for the most part, these were all party walls. The yellow indicates wood structures, and the red color indicated brick structures. So there's some historical precedence for there being some kind of wood structure on this site, which we've taken liberty of using.
Just a side note, because the Commission has some interest in history, as was evidenced by discussion earlier this evening, the reason that the stable structure, which is the house that I live in today and have lived in for now 26 years, remains is because it was a stable, and it housed the Boston police horses during a Great Fire, which destroyed most of the residences and industrial structures that used to occupy what is now Peters Park and the Wilkes Passage condo development. It was saved because the police horses were in that stable, and so the fire department went there first. The BRA took the empty lots attached, which created a party wall for the house that we are talking about renovating. They saved the house to save the horses. And that's why this house sits alone in Peters Park and has this kind of unique situation of being a, open on all four sides, standalone house with open space next to it, next to this enormous condo development. And Chris and I have been working together honestly for over 20 years. Some of you on the Commission have seen me before, to slowly but surely step forward in bringing this house into the modern age while respecting its historic significance, even though it was only a stable. I'm done, Chris. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, sure. To that note about being a stable, it is a unique building in this neighborhood. It is not a row house. It's not a modern Wilkes Passage. It's a unique building with unique character, and it deserves a unique solution. And I think we do have that to present to you today. I mean, for clarity and for speed, I think we'll probably go take a look at the renderings. I think that displays things much quicker for you, especially to catch people up. I will make this one larger for you. This is the Bradford Street side of the proposed. Right here on the left is the existing structure, essentially being preserved. We're not changing anything other than restoring what exists. In the middle is the wood structure with the Italianate roof, which was a request of the committee. And to the right-hand side is a masonry garage and little bump extension, which essentially, that allows us to get two cars in there without making the garage oversized. So it's able to sort of downsize the overall scale of the garage, still get two cars in, and that's essentially what this little bump on the side does, is keeps the scale of the garage down. On the back side, facing Peters Park, which we've come to the conclusion is not really in the jurisdiction of landmarks, but we still are trying to make an effort to bring the backside into some historical context. So on the left, we now have the garage with its associated bump out. In the middle, we have the Italianate roof. And on the far right, in this case, we have what is currently the very ugly parged facade. And the attempt here is to make this look like one of the sort of the storefront buildings, which is a historical reference we have in our project.
As a side note, I care a lot about Peters Park. I'm on the board of Peters Park, and making this house more pleasant, more connected to the park is very important, because right now it just looks sad. And this corner of the park deserves to be a very active part of the park. We've worked very hard to make the park more inviting for all, and this is part of that plan.
see, we'll go back up to the elevations. So part of the request that we have elevations that included more context. So those have been included here. They're at the end. Sorry, I'm scrolling quickly. So this is the front facade more in context, which was a request.
I'm not sure it's scrolling at all, Chris.
Maybe I have to pause for a moment.
No, we see
Yeah.
it. I see
Do you?
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
On
we
the
see
right-hand
the
side,
front
we have-
elevation. I don't see much context.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to describe the context. The context is Peters Park, which are trees shown on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, this dark line is essentially the height of the smallest portion of Wilkes Passage. And in between is the actual Wilkes Passage street. And there currently is a tree on this corner, which is part of the context. A different elevation shows the width of Bradford Street and the buildings on the opposite side of Bradford Street, which are clearly much taller than our structure and much taller than what we're proposing to construct. On the back side, on Peters Park, you have the shortest portion of Wilkes Passage on this left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is just more trees, and that is the context of this site. If we go to the, say, front elevation, sorry, I'm scrolling quickly. It takes a moment for the computer to catch up. And I will zoom out a little bit. In hardline drawing, we're showing what the front elevation would look like, in addition to some existing or some photographs of what used to exist on this site. In the upper right-hand corner, you have a photograph from the 1970s of the existing masonry structure, the carriage house, or the stable as it once was. And you can clearly see in the distance, there once was a garage on this site, which is our reference for the garage itself. And in the wooden structures that once used to exist in the neighborhood, you can see they were clapboard facades, sometimes with open windows, sometimes with shutters, and these large-scale recessed openings with a minimalistic detail around the openings, which is also what we're reflecting here in the new entry of the wooden structure. We're going to go around the building. This is the end, which abuts the Wilkes Passage condominiums. We have some color samples of colors we're proposing to use in the house, also a sample of the brick. Please note, we will have a large-scale mock-up of the construction. It's on site now, which you'll be able to view. We will also be having a mock-up of the masonry structure created by the contractor.
It's a bit buried under snow at the moment, forgive us, but we do have it.
Yeah. We have some additional reference photographs of the Italianate roofs that were requested. We have a photograph of, I know, a controversial house, but this is really here to talk about the color scheme that we intend to paint the wooden structure. And again, this is a photograph from the 70s of what the existing masonry structure used to look like. And it's noted that this end wall, which faces Wilkes Passage, was tar paper. So what's there today is not a historic facade. It's a reconstruction from the 70s. And that's represented here in the background. Can you see my cursor?
We can.
Okay, yeah. So that portion I'm circling is this tar paper shack in the photograph. Round to the back side of Peters Park, some additional references from the south end that we're using to establish the oriel and window organization. If I go deeper into the reference images, which I'm going to have to scroll quickly for, we can show you where we're pulling some references for this giant black facade, currently done in stucco or parging. This facade, to engage the park, will have 3 new windows that are real windows into the house. The other openings are essentially all faux openings. There's no openings on the first floor because it's directly onto the park. They're all faux openings. and the ones with shutters are faux openings. So I'll turn to some photographic references from the South End that we used in developing that facade. Oh, sorry, it is jumping. Let's see. This in the upper left-hand corner was Tremont Street, and you can see Tremont Street was lined with large flat facades. It had large signboards. There were windows that were closed over. There were awnings, canopies, large-scale openings at the first floor. And we're really using this type of vernacular to formulate something that happens on the Peters Park size on our big giant blank facade.
I would love to know the year of that photo.
I might have the year. This is cropped from the original photograph that came from the archives, so we might be able to get that for you. Some basic floor plan information. This is the basement. There is no basement under the new addition. It's all unexcavated. This is the bright green is what is our property and what will be designated as open green space, which is far in excess of what's required in accordance with zoning. The second floor is really where all the action happens. The first floor is really dedicated to entry. The second floor is where the kitchen, living room, dining room, and deck over the garage exist. And of course, there's third floor, which has the bedrooms.
As today.
So we're back to the elevation. I think that's the short of the presentation. We'd maybe like to have the committee ask some questions and dive a little deeper into things you'd like to know.
Okay. That was very thorough, Chris and Campbell. Thank you for all of that. I would love to pore over some of those photographs at my leisure. I hope we can get access to this presentation. We probably already do, right, Jackie?
We do. It's on a public notice.
Yeah, because it's nice to see that collection of photos. So we'll go to questions from commissioners. So Peter, do you have any questions?
I'd like to go after the other commissioners, seeing you've been briefed before, so.
Okay. John, since you remember this, because I don't think Chris has seen it either before.
Chris who?
The board. Oh,
Chris
he's
is
gone?
He's
Oh,
off.
he's gone.
He's
He's
gone.
gone.
He saw the first presentation. I think he's got both of them.
Oh, okay. So anyway, John, why don't you go?
I don't have many questions yet. I'm still trying to refresh my memory. But why are you're using the faux windows, I assume, or you're using the openings because you want a regular opening, but you're putting in faux windows. It seems to me like you could choose to put windows on stairs. I'm just curious why you're doing that. Or maybe a high window in the half bath.
Well, I think Campbell can speak a little bit to the park in that it's wonderful to be near the park. It's wonderful to be on the park, but the park does have some of its downsides. And the objective is to get some view to the park and really engage the park at some level, but not to over engage with that particular
Is that more for acoustics or?
I mean, honestly, it's for light and engagement, John. I mean, I've lived on this park for 26 years. When I bought this house, it was nearly derelict. I raised my child here. I've lived here a long time. As Chris said, the park is a blessing and it is a challenge. And so having full windows across the board on the park might be a bit much, but we certainly wanted, from a park perspective, looking up at the building, to feel like there are eyes on the park, to feel like there's a connection with the park. I've been on the board for years, and from a from a Friends of Peters Park board perspective, this house actually shapes that corner of the park, and making it feel more connected, making it feel like there's people like watching and enjoying is important. So we wanted to kind of echo the commercial feeling of Washington Street, because that's what we're really fronting on, and more of Wilkes Passage. But that many windows would be too many for the house itself.
Okay.
In terms of light intrusion and noise intrusion, is that the reason it's too many?
Yes.
Okay.
I assume
I
it's
just
privacy, acoustics.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Uh,
combination of design and light and noise, and, you know, coming up with the places where it makes sense. I mean, we've built the whole attachment is all very open to the park, and, you know, the connection there is important, and the landscaping, which I know is not the jurisdiction here, but we want to work with the Parks Department on this. I'm willing to invest in landscaping that side of the house to help the projects that we have at Peters Park grow, and sort of creating that landscaping to make it more open and connected to the meadow, which is what kind of we look out on, is important. And that's why we designed that attachment piece to be very open to the park.
Great.
I only see mechanical, I think, in one place, which is on the roof plan. Are there other mechanical units, vents, or other things
That was
like
one of
that?
may I go? That was one of the beauties of the recommendations of the committee that I thought worked really well. The Italianate roof is essentially created as a shield for all the mechanical equipment.
So those two squares, that's everything you need in the roof plan right there. Yes.
Yeah, it's up. Yeah, the mechanical's up in
Next
here.
to the porch, next to the deck.
Yeah.
And you don't need any other, I mean, I don't expect you to show us bathroom vents and stuff yet, but there's nothing other, that's enough for the whole project.
According to our HVAC consultant, that's enough for the project. I mean, this is now subject to the energy code. The level of insulation that's going to this house is now going to substantially reduce the energy consumption.
Got it.
Massive change. Years ago, John, you gave me permission to replace condensers on the roof. We're moving those.
Okay.
Any other questions, John?
I think that's my only questions right now. I'm still looking carefully at this. I didn't have time to get into it deeply this afternoon, so I will come back with it if I have more questions.
Okay. Catherine, any questions?
Just one. Chris, could you kindly go to the rendering along Bradford Street? Just want to understand. So the, thanks. The building on the left, that, you know, that was the original stable, is that right?
That's what we have today, yes.
Okay, so the door area there, that is.
Looks like a prison door today.
Well, no, but it's that's the original. And Campbell, I do remember you coming in front of us years ago. My goodness.
I've tried numerous times, Catherine.
Yeah,
this has been a journey of a lifetime.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful, wonderful. So that I understand is preserving the feel of the stable and so on. Now, the other building to the far right, that's a garage, and so those are garage doors.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Major driver, by the way, is security. I've had a lot of security problems since COVID. We have drug addicts who wander in, and you know, lots of interference that is really problematic. So the garage is a driver for me.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, and also the concern about the noise. I mean, there's all sorts of activity around the park and so on. It's understandable. Thank you. That was my only question, John.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Peter, questions?
No, it was answered. My question was going to be about the visibility and location of the mechanicals, but John covered that.
Excellent. Felicia, questions?
No questions.
Okay. I've got some questions. I'd like to hear about the fencing you're showing in your renderings that wrap around the entire parcel. I would like to hear from staff where our jurisdiction begins and ends relative to Peters Park. Because we've reviewed fencing in Peters Park with the Parks Department. So do we review the fencing on the Peters Park side of this property or not?
So it's a little bit of a gray area.
Okay.
Surprised to hear that.
I would say, I mean, our jurisdiction in general is new if it's part of the new construction, I would say that it is something that's reviewable, but I stand to be corrected.
Okay. Well, in the effort of covering what we need to cover, let's look at everything. And, you know, if we learn later that it's not in our jurisdiction, so be it. Can you tell me about the fencing and the curbing that the fences sit on?
Sure. So there's two types of fencing that we're proposing, and I think I'm going to switch to the plan just to be a little clear about that.
Sure.
And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. It's slightly off the page, but you can use this line. So there are two fences in this proposal. There's the sort of decorative fence, which we call the front door kind of fence, which is a piece here.
Yeah.
There's a piece that wraps around and somehow dies over here, which is up for discussion how we want to die it. And then there's another fence that, to the best of our knowledge and belief, is provided by the Parks Department, which we have no control over. That's the fence that defines the 6-foot buffer zone.
Okay.
So it runs along this line currently right here.
Yeah.
It's been in some of the photographs. It's not a pretty fence.
Mm-hmm.
It was installed by the Parks Department, and I don't believe that Cammie had any say in it.
Yeah, well, 2007, there was a massive reconstruction of the park that was attached to the Wilkes Passage construction, because as you probably know, contributions are made by large renovations and new builds. And so during that time, there was substantial damage done to my house, not as a result of Wilkes, but as a result of some construction in the park. And so we had a major flood. That was caused by someone who left a hose bib open that was attached to the house, but was in public domain. As a result of that, Tony Pollock, who was the commissioner of the Parks Department at that time, said, look, we've got to put a buffer zone around your house. That's what we've done on Shawmut. It's what we've done in other locations in Mission Hill and Dorchester and others. We got to put a buffer zone around your house to enable the land to remain parks land, but protect your residents from public accidents, let's call it. So they installed this fence, which, as Chris said, and you know, probably Chris, in the picture that you have in the initial pages, you can see it. There were trees in there that really aren't appropriate. There's a whole history that you don't want to know, but I can share if you want. So if you look here on the back side of the house in the upper right, you can see the ivy growing. There used to be a large tree there that fell down and caved into my basement. I mean, the whole thing. So that fence, which you can barely see there because it's not very substantial, that is sort of a standard park privacy fence. The assumption here, although we have not yet gone to parks, because it seems to us, based on the best that Chris and I can discern, that you need to weigh in first. Zoning has said yes, everything is fine. Now we need your opinion, and then we go to parks. We assume that privacy fence would extend along what will now be the continuation of the residence to the Wilkes Passage fence.
Right, thus the 6-foot buffer continuing.
Right, Right.
So
yeah,
that double line you just traced, or that
would extend.
would extend, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's not
we
there today, but you are
correct.
anticipating that it will become there in the
Correct.
future. Okay,
Correct.
got it.
And this green zone, which is my property, but I'm essentially, I mean, it will continue to be tax paid property associated with the land, but you know, it's not going to be clear to anyone else that it's separated from the
Right.
buffer zone. And we've engaged Lombardi Design, which you may know because I think you're a landscape architect.
I am, and I know Greg.
Greg is a very well-respected
Mhm.
designer and known for historic care and thoughtfulness to try and do the design for the house, you know, the landscape design for the house, which matters a lot to me and matters to Peters Park. And, you know, I've been on the board there for a while and we're going to try and make this consistent. We want to create that buffer zone along with what open space we contribute to create, again, something that's welcoming and pollinator friendly, native, etc., but appropriate for where it is.
Mhm.
But again, we have to make some assumptions about what the park is, you know, what Parks Department is going to, as you probably
Right.
know, it's an acting Parks Commissioner.
Mhm.
So I had spoken with the previous Parks Commissioner, Commissioner Woods, but you know, now we have a new commissioner. So we'll have to
Right.
talk about that. But our goal is to make that very consistent with the rest of the park and fulfill the goals that we've been pursuing as we've improved the beds and the gardens of the park, etc.
That's great. Great context. Getting back to my question though about the fencing, you mentioned that there are two fences associated with this property. Yes, it's true, but only one type of fence that you are proposing. Is that correct?
I believe that's probably the scenario that the Parks Department will mandate their fence and we will have our fence.
Right.
And if, I mean, I don't know how, and neither does Friends of Peters Park. I've spoken with the president, and, you know, we don't exactly know how this will work out. If indeed the Parks Department says, oh, Friends of Peters Park, if you can raise the money, which, you know, may be from our work, but to fulfill a fence that is consistent here, then go ahead.
Mhm.
You know, but
Right.
if they don't, then the part that we control is obviously the part on Bradford Street here, which creates the sort of traditional front yard where front yards exist in the South End on Bradford Street. And then along the Wilkes Passage Way, which is really set by Wilkes Passage, by the way.
Right.
You know, so being consistent with what they have established, and we, you know, we know them well. I'm the president of the Bradford Street Association as well, so I know the, you know, head of Wilkes Passage Association quite well. Our goal would be to be consistent, at least assuming that you all agree, with their fencing on the Wilkes Passage side. And
well, we would
probably
have to
that
see what their
corner.
fencing looks like. We
Yeah, and
probably
we
approved it in 2007.
Yeah, I imagine so, and we can certainly show pictures. Then on the park side, it's kind of up to the Parks Department. I mean, there's a lot of
Well,
constituents here.
getting back to the plan and my initial question, the fencing that we would be reviewing as part of your application would be the fencing within the zone that's colored green. The fencing that's outside of that zone that's colored green will be determined by the Parks Department, and we would hope that the Parks Department would come before us when they are proposing new fencing within the park.
Although we, just for your consideration, if you look at the line at the upper side of this design between the green open space and the buffer zone, we would propose not necessarily to have a fence there.
Yeah, I understood that. It looks like
Okay,
your fence is returning to the corner, upper right corner of the garage.
The Wilkes zone, if you will, the
That's
Wilkes
right.
fence. Yes,
Your
exactly.
side yard that abuts Wilkes Passage, your fence will surround that by returning to the corner of the garage.
That's what
And-
we intend.
Right. And that the property line above the phrase green open space would be open to the 6-foot buffer.
That's our proposal to be considered by you and the Parks Department. Yes.
Okay. And just so I'm asking these questions so I understand what you're proposing. So I can see from the rendering only, but not from this plan, that at least in front of the wood addition between the house and the garage, that fence sits on a curb. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is you're in the rendering. Let me get there.
This is on the
Not
park,
there, but on the
on the
side
Bradford
here.
side. Yeah.
Well, anywhere you've got a fence. Is it sitting on a curb? It looks like that in the rendering, but on the plan, there was no, I didn't see any. And in fact, in this rendering, you're showing a low fence, a fence that doesn't look like
Yeah.
the fence. Where you said you weren't putting in a fence, but that the Parks Department would, that fence looks like lower than the existing fence that's there today
I think
behind your
that's
house.
I think that's true, Chris. I mean, it was a rendering.
It's a
Right.
rendering.
The hedge was a concept. I mean, it was, we
Sure.
were in discussion with the Friends of Peters Park and talking about pollinators and what we would put there. And they wanted something that was more sort of defensible because the dogs, and I do have 3, but the dogs jump into the pollinators and so forth. So,
Right.
but you're right. We showed it as a bit lower than it is today. And
I
for
hope
the
you succeed in getting it to look like that, but
Yeah, right.
that's not what we're reviewing today. And
Yeah.
we're toward the end of a very long meeting.
Yeah,
So
I know.
I'd rather keep the discussion to what's on your property.
So
So
this is also missing a picture, just so you know, Commissioner, that it's missing the picture of the Wilkes fence going along the line here of parks, because we were trying to show the building, but they
Right.
have a low fence and we can provide you pictures of that. Our intent would be to match that, assuming that you agree.
Right,
Because
of course, I
that
heard that.
fence goes along the edge of that Wilkes passageway, which is a public way.
So in this image, are you saying that the fence on the very far right side that abuts Wilkes Passage brick walk, that fence exists? It's there now?
It does not exist in that location. There is a fence between Wilkes Passage and Peters Park that was evidently approved at some time. It
Yes,
could
it was a wood
potentially
fence.
be an extension of that
An
fence.
extension of it, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would all be new fencing.
Yes.
And like I said, your rendering shows this fencing sitting on a curb.
Yeah.
And I want to know if you're actually proposing a curb, because your plan doesn't show a curb. Your plan only shows the fence. It doesn't show
There
the fence
is-
mounted on a curb.
The
On-
construction documents have a detail showing a granite curb.
Okay, so
And on the Wilkes side, there is a curb that exists today,
and you're going to keep that curb and mount the fence on top of it?
assuming the curb is stable enough to do so.
Okay. So, but also along the Bradford Street side to the right of the garage, that would have to be new curb.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And along the back side of the house where your property abuts Peters Park and the buffer, that would have to be new curb.
I don't know
there's
there'd be a curb in this condition.
Actually, there's a curb there, but it's very damaged.
I'm not talking about that fence because we don't control that fence. I'm only
Yeah.
talking about the little bit of fence that returns and connects to the corner of the garage.
Sure.
Right, right.
Yeah, sure. There could be a curb under that, yeah.
Right. I would just want the condition to remain the same throughout.
There's also a shed there, which is very unfortunate. It was placed by the Parks Department without Friends of Peters Park permission. They're very concerned about it. This shed abuts my property line and will need to be moved, and is a discussion with Parks.
Okay. Well,
It's a
if it does,
zoning violation as well, which zoning has noted.
well, if it doesn't move, you might have to come back with us, come back to us
Yeah,
with an alteration.
I believe it's going to have to.
Okay. So anyway, those were my questions. What I don't know is what the fence you're proposing actually looks like. I see what it looks like in the rendering, but I need to see more detail about that and how it compares with the fence to Peters Park. So I would think that can be discussed either in a subcommittee or at some later meeting where we get into more details.
Sure.
that's
And
fine.
Lombardi Design probably has some contributions to make here as well.
Sure, of course. So anyway, that's the end of my questions. And unfortunately, I got sloppy and threw a comment or two in there as well. But before asking my fellow commissioners for comments, so I'm going to do that now. Catherine, do you have any comments regarding what you've seen?
Why, I sure do.
Good. Thank you for being patient.
Of course. I have no comments on the fence, but on these buildings, I will say, I just look at this, I think it's gorgeous. I mean, may I be that effusive in my compliments? I think
Please.
I think it's great. My gosh, the improvements you've made. And I do apologize because I apparently was not here when you first presented, but certainly, as I mentioned, Campbell has been in front of us before for this project, trying to, do something here. And this is just, I think it's stellar. The side facing the park is lovely. I love what you're doing with the middle building, that oriole, and the attention to detail on the 3-story original stable, and as well on the Bradford Street side. I just think it's a fabulous project. Kudos to you, Chris.
Well, thank you.
And Campbell.
My compliments to Chris. He's been so patient over the years, and thank you all for your patience as well. I've tried multiple times. I hope this will be the time.
That's great.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Peter. Comments? Do we have Peter?
Moving
You
along.
do, except that I was muted. So
okay.
No comments other than dittoing what Catherine said. I think it's beautiful and it's something you'll be proud of.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Peter. Felicia?
No comments. It's lovely.
Okay. John?
Yes, I pretty much agree with my fellow commissioners. I know this has been a long path. I was trying to recover my memory. It seems like you've done everything that I remember us asking for. I remember the comments about the loggia, the roofs, and some of the materials that we talked about. That was like a decade ago, I think.
Oh.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah,
well, some of that. Chris is very meticulous.
and I appreciate it. It's an interesting project. It could attract attention because it isn't what someone I think would expect there, not knowing the history of the site. And I really appreciate the history that you brought in, not just the pictures, which I find fascinating too, but your Sanborn map or whatever that was with that shows that there were originally wood frame structures here is fascinating too.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready to go.
Oh, thank you. And it's the 50th anniversary of Peters Park this year, so we're so excited to do it this
year. Chris, please keep that image up of your mock-up because it's going to be important when I get to my comments. John, do you have anything further?
As always, I reserve the right to comment again, but no, I don't at this time.
Okay. So I will support Catherine's expression of effusiveness and say this is wonderful. I really, Chris, I really love and Campbell, your attention to history. I would love to pore over all of those photographs, but the references you made to them about the simple but wide openings, deep entries into wood structures, that were inset into wide but very simple openings, and how you're giving a nod to that with your wood addition between the house and the house and the garage. I'll call it the house, even though it was a horse barn. And oh, by the way, Campbell, don't ever say it was only a horse barn. Don't ever say that. It is the most special thing in the neighborhood that it is a horse barn.
Yeah.
It is a gem because it is a horse barn. and that it's not a townhouse, that is not a demotion, certainly not in my eyes. But anyway, I mean, I am thrilled that we have that building, that they somehow managed to save it in that fire that destroyed what looks like blocks and blocks of buildings. And I love that history, and thank you for sharing that history, Campbell.
Of course.
Looking at, and I like the fact that you said there was a garage on the site of actually quite similar proportion or close to it.
Yes.
So all of that, I think, makes it feel, you know, even more authentic, even though it's all new construction. That it's authentic in its reference to history, and I like that. When it comes to replicating historic detail, that's where I want us to really pay attention. And I'm looking at this mock-up, and I'm looking at the dental detail under the gutter, and I'm not seeing much in the way of shadow line. And dental detail is much deeper than that on historic buildings. And that is something I'm going to want to be looking at carefully on all of your architectural detailing. The brackets under the Italianate cornice in the wood addition, we actually allowed a building on Dartmouth Street that we approved a building on Dartmouth Street that showed us an elevation that they were reconstructing a brick townhouse with all of the detail that would have happened on an 1850s South End townhouse. And when it got built, it all looked applied and about a half an inch thick. And when I give tours of the neighborhood, which I've done for the Landmark Commission, I've done for the Boston Society of Architects, and what new construction looks like in the district, I actually start with that building and I say, shame on the commission for approving it. You know, and I was on the commission at the time, because we didn't look closely enough at the details, and the devil is in the details. So I want to make sure that as this project progresses, that nothing looks like it was applied, that it looks integral. And the proportion of the brackets are really important. And the proportion of the brackets on that building on Dartmouth Street is its biggest failure. And there is a building across the street from it, an original building with an original Italianate roof with original brackets that make the new building look even more ridiculous because the proximity of the model that they were copying is across the street, and they didn't even copy it that well. So that's why I want you to look as closely as possible at those details. Sure. Also, I love how your rendering shows all of your windows, real and false, with deep shadows surrounding them, which suggests that the glass is deeply set. And I sure hope that's the way you're detailing it. And that, you know, I learned from Chris Sullivan, I don't know if that name, Charlie Sullivan, I don't know if that name means anything to any of you, but he was the commissioner of the Cambridge Historic Commission for what feels like forever. And I attended one meeting in Cambridge that he chaired, and he said something about the glass being set back no less than 4 inches and preferably 6 inches from the facade. And I never forgot that. That was probably 30 years ago. And he was right. And when I've seen buildings where it's 2 inches or 1 inch, it doesn't look, where they were trying to replicate a historic model, it just doesn't look right. And even though today's construction allows you to do that. So, you know, those are things that I am going to be looking at closely. And because I can't imagine that a project this complex can get approved completely in this meeting. There are details that we would have to see coming to us.
Sure.
So John, hopefully to set your mind a little bit at ease, because the back of that structure is basically a facade that's being applied to the brick, the detailing I've done really necessitates that the windows be set back.
Yeah.
Great.
There's
But-
zero insulation. I mean, the house is freezing cold. And
Right.
I do want to assure you as well, Rick Cantelli, Concept C Corporation, a South End builder with deep understanding of the neighborhood, has stood by us through all of these meetings and remains on the line tonight, and is very conscious of the importance of detail and historic authenticity. And that's why we selected him. So
that's
we'll,
great.
you know, we'll make sure that these things are right. By the way, just a side note, this is about both the history and the future. My daughter is actually a nationally rated rider and is now an equine vet at Fairfield Equine, working with the Olympic teams who are jumpers. So somehow stables were meant to be part of our history and future.
That's great. That's great. And so Chris, I just want to say your wood addition, the brick garage, and the wood lean-to on the side of the garage all have new windows on other sides besides the side that faces Peters Park. And all of those windows, I think, fall under the category of needing to have the proper depth for them to have the shadow lines that you're showing in your renderings, which your rendering is correct. And I'm just emphasizing that I want to see that followed through in the detailing.
So the depth in the existing house, the big facade, that is very real, and the intent. It would probably not be the same in the new piece because there isn't the depth there to do that. It's
okay.
It's new construction.
You're
right?
not, you
It's a
don't have to meet
2x6
the energy
wall.
codes.
It's still a 2x6 wall, so there's not the depth to set a window back 4 inches.
You don't have, you're not having to meet the new exterior installation code.
We are, but and I think we have 2-inch rigid on the exterior, so we do have some depth, but I wouldn't say it's 4 inches.
I think you can get enough. Yeah,
right.
4
Whatever
inches
the
isn't
maximum
magic.
you can get.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I think you no problem. And John says 4 inches, but that's really a brick dimension. On the wood frame, I don't think there's a magic thing that happens at 4 inches. I agree completely with what John is saying. Yeah. I think
we do have the opportunity because we do have 2-inch rigid on the exterior.
Yeah, you do.
And that, your windows with your 2/2, which I love to see here, if you're going to do thermopane windows, that they're give the appearance of through muntins, with inside and outside muntins with a dark spacer in between.
Always.
Yeah. So all of that. So just having to say that for the record, Chris, I know you know these things. But anyway, and the detailing that we'll be looking for as the project progresses. But, honestly, we're getting into those details because everything else you've shown is really spectacular and, looks like it fits and responded to earlier comments. I feel like we saw this ages ago. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't quite as complete as this.
No, it wasn't.
But it was directionally this way.
Yes. Many things are the same. I mean, I recognized it instantly. And,
it's a unique property.
Yeah. And but even, I mean, I recognized the design of the additions instantly. And except that you've made the improvements, the way you've advanced it responded to our comments. So that's terrific. And thank you for all of that. And so I imagine what we're doing here is approving this in concept and that we want to see details coming either before a full commission or at least a subcommittee. So I don't know how other commissioners feel.
I agree.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, and once again, I would be happy to volunteer to be on a subcommittee.
Do you want to do subcommittee or full commission?
I don't have a preference.
What's your time frame, guys?
Faster.
Faster?
We want to go faster.
All right, subcommittee will be faster, and I'll do that if we can do it virtually.
Virtually? Oh.
As
You don't wanna
opposed
see
to
it.
in person.
Just like this meeting.
Well, you can always walk by if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
mock-up is in the yard. You'll be able to see this, and soon we'll have a
Mm-hmm.
masonry mock-up as well.
I would think
In
you'd
the-
want to see that in person.
In the snow, but yes.
Oh, a mock-up I would want to see in person, but other details, you know, the advancement of details in the construction drawings, I would want to, I think that could be virtual. But yeah, mock-ups I would want to go and see in person for sure.
So what are we saying? We need a subcommittee?
That's one option.
For-
But
for-
it would help them if there was a subcommittee because they wouldn't have to wait for a monthly meeting.
Yeah, that would be preferable. It's, I've been on here for 3.5 hours now.
Oh, you have? Well,
Didn't you just
Don't-
love that
don't mind
discussion about
us.
the color of the sign?
Yeah.
It's hard for him to corral me because I travel on business all the time. So
all right, how
Mhm.
about a motion?
Go for it.
Yeah,
I-
I've been inviting a motion for a bit. Go
I
ahead.
I moved to accept the application as submitted with a subcommittee created to review details.
Second,
Okay.
I'll make
We have-
the subcommittee to be John Amadeo, myself, with Catherine as the alternate.
Agreed.
Okay, amendment accepted. So we can go to public comment before the vote.
Chris, if you could stop sharing your screen so I'd be able to.
Yeah, Chris, you have to stop sharing so
There he goes.
Jackie can put up my script.
Yep, sorry.
After 30 years, I still don't have it memorized.
Advanced sharing options. Stop. There it is. There, I found it. Stop. Did it stop sharing?
No.
Not yet.
not quite yet.
This is mine now. This is my screen.
Okay, that's
Just
what I
read
thought.
through.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Great. Give me a sec here. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at southendldc@boston.gov. And Sarah, any written comments or anybody raising their hand?
We did not receive any written public comment, and I do not see any hands raised.
Okay.
Before we vote, if I can interject as staff for clarification, both on the record and for staff to understand how to continue with this application, understanding the subcommittee, would there be a possibility that the commission would be amendable to adding perhaps more detail to when a subcommittee should be meeting? Or if you could provide clarification, if any commissioner can provide clarification so staff can, correctly logistically get everyone together for when this project is advancing.
For a subcommittee, what times of day are good?
No,
Is
sort of
that
the
what you want?
nature. So to my understanding, at the current status, this application is approved with the proviso that a subcommittee would be remanded or would be remanded to the subcommittee. And I just would like to know what the progression of the project, if there's any key portions of the timeline or key elements of the project that would prompt the subcommittee.
I think as John already started by suggesting, we would want to see wall sections. We don't care
Yeah.
about insulation, but we wanted to see like the depth of overhangs, the proportions of the eave profiles, the depth of the dentals, the
Cross sections through windows?
Yeah, through the windows to the loggia, that being the recessed entry, that kind of thing.
Right.
And
And
selection of materials.
The garden fence on the curb and the existing Wilkes Passage fence and how they compare.
Great. Thank you so
And,
much for the
you know, we think we
clarification.
all know what Chris is going to do, Chris and Campbell, and probably they'll do it and there'll be quick meetings, but sometimes you run into problems too. Oh, we can't do this because the energy code is not allowing us to do this, and you know, that kind of thing, blah, blah, blah.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity for guidance.
And also you can use us, you know, the historic takes precedent. So you have to meet the energy code overall, but in details, if we say no, you can go back and say, Landmark said no.
Thank you. And as well, I think some guidance may be valuable with the Parks Department. So
Sure.
that discussion will be very helpful. We would appreciate your participation as we proceed with that.
Did that help, Jackie?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So I'm sorry, Sarah, did we have anybody who wanted to comment?
No.
No. Okay. So with that, I think we take a vote. So, John.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye,
oh, wait.
aye.
Yes, you're voting, right. Peter.
Aye.
Felicia. Felicia, are you still with
Apologies.
us? Oh,
Felicia let us know that she actually had to leave at 9.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, and it's 9:04. Okay, and so the chair votes with the motion, and the motion carries. And I just want to say, well, first of all, Chris and Campbell, thank you for such a thorough and beautiful design. But also, when you speak with Greg Lombardi, give him my regards.
Will do. Will do. We're excited to be working with him.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And thank you all so much for your support and guidance through this process. Not over, but we appreciate it so far.
Sure thing.
Excellent presentation.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank
all right.
you
So
very
we're going to go to administrative review now.
I move that we approve the administrative review.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. We'll take a vote.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
And the chair votes with the motion. The motion carries. And do we have to approve any minutes, Jackie?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, I move that we ratify the January 6th meeting minutes.
Second.
Apologies, that was supposed to say 2026.
Yeah.
That's okay, we know.
And Jackie, I can still vote even though I was not at the meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, John?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye, aye, aye.
And the chair votes with the motion carries. Do we have any staff updates?
We do. We just wanted to let you all know that we will be having the BLC Commissioner event. We sent out those respective invitations to everyone. We would love to see everyone in person. If you haven't RSVP'd yet and you're able to,